Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, and so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show. Booyah!
Hey, we're one day closer to the weekend. It's Thursday. Welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. G. Bush. It's good to have you back, my friend. You feeling better?
Yes, I am back better than ever.
Good.
Slightly.
Glad to hear that.
Slightly. I'm on the men's, but we in the building today, though.
Yeah, which is good. Adam is not. Adam the Bull, he's going to join us second hour, right?
Yeah, we have 3 remote calls. We only have 3 remote lines. So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, we just couldn't work Bolin earlier, but he's going to join us about 12:15, 12:20 after
Good.
Aditi for our full Guardians offseason preview.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. He sort of teased that yesterday. I'm curious. He mentioned a catcher that he thinks that the Guardians should really go after. I'm curious to see which name he's going to throw out at us. You mentioned Aditi. Aditi's going to be on. She's coming on the second half hour. She'll kick off our noon hour. We're going to talk about the Browns-Dolphins matchup. There's a lot to get into there. Big. They're all big, let's face it. But this one's really big for the Browns. It's an AFC game. They're already in a big hole in the AFC when it comes to tiebreakers. Miami is a team that will certainly be in the mix for a wild card spot, perhaps a divisional title, but right now it looks like a wild card. The Browns have already lost too many games to teams that are in that fight. They cannot lose this football game. We'll talk more about that. Also, Sam Jaeger, who is a huge Browns and Buckeyes fan. He's also an up-and-coming actor. He's at, what's the Netflix series he's in?
Handmaid's Tale. That's Hulu. And A Devil in Ohio. Devil in Ohio is a new show.
Devil in Ohio is the new one. That's the one I've heard about. And he kind of, true to form, he plays this guy that's a big Cleveland Browns and Ohio State Buckeye fan. He's going to join us here in just a little bit at the bottom of the hour. But we're starting with no fence riders. So do we already have Maurice on?
Maurice is not on yet, so let's give him one more sec to hop on.
All right.
He usually is on time, so he said 11:05. So give him 2 more minutes, and we'll.
While we wait for him, G. Bush, yesterday one of the things we talked about was the Browns matching up against the Dolphins, and we talked about the most pivotal player for the Browns in this football game. I think it's Denzel. I think if he doesn't play, it's an L, period. I think if he plays, we have a very, very good chance at winning. What say you about who the pivotal player in this football game is?
Well, I look at Denzel definitely has to play in this game. When you look at Jalen Waddle and you look at Tyreek Hill, I mean, these two guys are on pace for one of the most historic years of all time. I mean, one guy has 1,100 yards, one guy has 800 yards, and we're halfway through the season. So I look at him, and I also look at, if I had to pick, it'd be splitting hairs between Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett, because they're going to have to get some pass rush. It's the same recipe they had when they went against the Bengals. You're dealing with people that have a prolific passing attack. You need to be able to get home, and if you're not going to get home, at least give a little pressure. And if they could do that, I think that they can stick in the game, stay in the game. And this is a winnable game for me. I know that they're a good team. They don't run the ball very much. But if the Browns can get a turnover or two, because Tua will give you a turnover. He'll give you a couple if you pressure him. And he's been banged up a lot. I think we're not saying to go out and try to concuss somebody, but we want to put him on the ground and make him see a little something. We want to make him nervous in the pocket.
Make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, comfortable.
Nothing else.
Nothing else than doing that. But I think the Browns are in a unique position. Before the bye, I was very pessimistic about the outlook of the team.
Yeah.
If they can win this game, I think it changes the complexion of what everyone thinks about them, because then that would mean you played a really great team in Cincinnati who went to the Super Bowl last year. Now you're going to play the Dolphins, who are high-flying offense. And when you get those two things taken care of, now Buffalo seems like, I mean, I'm not winning. We're going to see about Mr. Allen, but Buffalo all of a sudden, if he doesn't play in that game turns from, Jason said, 0% win to, I think the Browns are favored in that game if Josh Allen does not play in that game.
Favored.
I give them a favor if they can win this win.
Yeah, I know we don't want to look too far ahead of ourselves, but when we did the preseason talk about where do they have to be when Watson comes back, I think everybody kind of agreed if you're not 6-5, you're really on the outside looking in because you're gonna ask Deshaun to win 6 games, 5 games.
Only lose one game.
Yeah, and that's too tight of a rope to walk. So you can't get there if you lose this one.
Can't.
You can't. That's why I think the playoffs are underway. I think they are for the Browns.
This elimination game.
You have to win. All right, do we have Maurice?
We do have Maurice. Yes, sir. What's up, Maurice?
What's up?
There he is.
Hey, Maurice, they got you back in the attic again, dog. They said, nah, you was doing too much downstairs. I told you the kids was asleep. Your baby's sleeping. You sitting up and you being loud talking this football. Man, you got to keep it quiet. You got to keep it quiet during them sleeping hours, dog. You know what I'm saying? Get you together.
Well, it's 2 things. One, my life is back to normal because the baby's born, so we got like some sort of like a normal schedule again. And you see, I was right last week about the Buckeyes when they played Northwestern. I thought about you. I told you that you play down to the competition. Those other guys. You see what happened last week.
So I wasn't here. You said they would struggle with the Wildcats.
Yeah, it's like you can probably, I don't know, you're a sports buff. You can probably go through history. In college, most of the guys who are going to the NFL, those guys are set on performing very well. Right, but the other guys who think that the guys who are going to the NFL that's going to take care of the game, those guys kind of take off. But they don't realize that the other team across from them are playing like it's a Super Bowl. And so, like mentally, if you're not prepared to fight somebody, like no matter how good you are, if a person just believes that they can win, like, and I say it all the time, and you can take this with you for the rest of your life. The only difference between somebody who goes to Northwestern or Wisconsin or Ohio State is just the inconsistent play in high school or like some factor of like size or weight or something like that, right? But if you can make it to a Division I program, I don't care where it's at, you can play football, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so these guys are competitive, but the reason that Ohio State wins is because it's harder for Northwestern to hold it together for 4 quarters than it is for Ohio State to just put it together for a series or 2. And so, it's always like that.
That's real as heck. You just said that, man. Like that is a fact. Like I could even look at myself. Like if you say, one year I was, I'm all of a sudden played behind Kenny Peterson, and so all of a sudden, Kenny Peterson is just the 2-time. He was Defensive Player of the Year. I didn't play till my junior year, and what happens is they're like, oh, you played well your junior year, but you're gonna have to prove that again. That's the difference between the levels, right? If I would have been playing earlier. Playing at that level, they would have been like, listen, Ohio State, Michigan, do whatever you want. But, when you don't have that cachet and that film work, you are going to go to a lower school, like chances are, unless you're a dynamic quarterback or something like that. So that is all factual what he just said.
Yeah,
too.
but you can still
players
play.
Can play. Yeah. Players can play and players get out too.
Yep.
When you look at local guys that had good high school careers that went to smaller colleges. Kareem Hunt ended up at Toledo.
I still can't. He confuses me.
I don't know how he got. I don't know how he got away. How he missed the radar. But Northwestern is filled with guys like that.
Yep.
And this year they're having a down year. Obviously, they're a lower tier team in the Big Ten. But don't sleep on these guys because they still have premier athletes. And if you take them for granted, they will stand up and they'll make some noise against you.
Just like how many people do you see in the NIL, not the NIL, but the transfer portal, right? You see these guys that's coming from like Duquesne.
All the time
going
now.
to USC. I'm like, how are you?
Yeah.
Colgate. Yeah, I'm at Michigan right now. What? You went to a D2 school, and now all of a sudden, you ready to go, Maurice. They put numbers up. They get the film work out there, and all of a sudden, guess what?
Yep, they're going to big schools.
No, look, I tell you, when I was visiting Marcus Freeman a few weeks back. I went to Indiana for something totally different, but I stopped at the campus. And when I was talking to him, man, they treat college like free agency now. And he was talking about guys who, like, running backs who are splitting time at other schools, and they talk like they're going to pick these people from other places. So you just may have like a bad high school program, and you didn't win a bunch of games, or somebody didn't see you, but you go to college, you develop, you play for a few years, and now somebody can pick you up, and you're in the spotlight again. And who highlighted Joe Burrow's highlighted that stuff. Where he had his time to develop at Ohio State, and then he went to the championship, and so now it becomes a thing or a part of recruiting where at one part it was frowned upon, but now teams are like, hey, this is how I get better. I mean, it's the reason why Nick Saban is struggling. you don't monopolize these guys anymore just from your brand in general. Being with NIL and also being able to pull people out of the portal, those things are definitely factors, and you'll see more people who corral their booster teams or whoever those people are. They call it like these little syndicates that they got boosters who act like NIL deals, right? It's a little
Syndicates, syndicates the proper word. That's exactly. There's a lot of money changing hands.
Yeah, all they do is they syndicate their money, and then they say, "Oh, it's a charity. Yeah, we're going to buy this high school kid him and his mother." Get him off the
how
hood.
times have changed, and you may know that more than anybody.
Yeah,
now we have
all
legal
good.
syndicates. All right, let's do Fence Riders. McNuggets, how many questions do we have this week?
We have 6 questions, and before we start, I just want to give you guys a stat.
All right.
For the first time since we started doing this segment,
Yep.
we have multiple unanimous answers. So I went back through the archives, and we have had 8 times so far in 8 weeks we've had unanimous answers. We are 3-5 on those unanimous answers. So
that's good.
Everything we say now with a grain of salt, because 4 of these are unanimous.
Okay.
4 of
4.
the 6?
I hope they're all on the good side.
They are on the good side for the Browns, but our previous track record says that may not be a good thing. So we're going to see.
Well, wait, 3 out of 5, that's 60%.
No, 3 and 5.
Oh, 3 and 5. I thought you said 3 out of 5.
8 times we've been unanimous. We've been right unanimously 3 times.
We
we've been
tend to
wrong
lean
unanimously.
homerish. I mean, I don't think
I know,
that's.
I'm just saying. Let the
Okay.
world know. I just don't want anyone to be like, they said this has to be true. The whole panel agrees.
Right.
We're the smartest people in Cleveland, I know, but even smart people make mistakes.
I'm glad you know it.
So just throwing it out there.
For those that are just seeing this for the first time, explain what No Fence Riders is. How do we
It's
play?
simple. You're either on one side of the fence or the other. It's a yes or no
hardcore,
question.
yeah.
Hardcore, no middle ground.
No waffling.
And Maurice has become a fixture with this, and he's sometimes the voice of reason. So Maurice, I hope you're the voice of reason here sometimes. So let's take question number 1 here, Steve. Will a Brown not named Myles Garrett record a sack versus Miami? Maurice, you're up first.
The only reason I'm going to say no, it has more to do with I'm gonna butcher his name, Togaloyo, whatever his name is. I think he's conditioned after what happened in his injury to get the ball out there faster. So I would say no.
All you have to do is call him Tua. That works.
Tua.
Yeah, just say Tua.
Well, Maurice, I'm glad you said no because let's see the reveal, Steve. Literally everybody else said yes. So Maurice is on the lawn, everyone else is on the fence.
I'm just playing the odds on this.
I am too.
Yeah.
Like, and I count a half a sack as a sack, by the way. I don't know. Maybe we should got a point of clarification.
Listen, a half a sack is a sack.
I did not
Yeah.
clarify, so a half sack does count. And
Okay.
let's see the Browns sack leaders this year. We have played 8 games. This is how the team stacked.
That is
stack
woeful,
up.
by the way.
So,
It is woeful.
Dang.
I know.
Yeah.
That is really.
so when I put the question at first in my head, I'm like, that's too easy, and then I remembered, no, it's not. Look at these.
That's
the
what
statistics say
happens.
someone will not.
That's what happens when you don't bring any pressure.
You know what though? We had a safety sack
Yeah, we did.
that's not up there.
Well, there's a couple people tied with one. Like
Okay.
John Johnson has one. Ronnie Harrison has half a
Okay.
sack.
They didn't even make the cut.
Get on there.
So hold on.
It's not as bad as it looked then. When you put that up there and said, "Here's our sack," I thought, "That's it? That's all?"
We could put 20 guys with the half sacks on the list. But Maurice, what's up? You try chiming in.
No, I don't. Y'all don't think that Tua wants to get the ball out a little bit sooner after what happened to him?
Yeah, I do. I think he doesn't want to take that hit, but at the same time, you've got to be able to get home.
We'll see.
I think that is. We've talked about this all week, and I'm dying to get your thoughts. Leroy said, "Do not blitz Tua. Don't do it. You're playing into their hand if you blitz them." I think everybody else on the panel kind of agrees. You've got to get pressure, and when you rush, you've got to get home.
pressure.
So, what's your
Yes.
mindset here? Are you coming after him hard? You can't let him sit back there and take all
That
day
makes Tyreek
because
even more dangerous. If you're,
Tyreek Hill gets 4 seconds.
one
It's a
way,
touchdown.
when you're
Talk to
asking
him.
the key player in the game, to me, Denzel hasn't been Denzel this year. So
No.
even if he plays, Miles is the one who can change the whole thing. If he's getting there and speeding up the patterns a little bit, that might be your best way to neutralize Tyreek is to just let Miles get after him.
I agree. What do you think, Maurice? Do you think they should come hard with blitzes?
No, I agree. It play to me when you play with blitzes and you get him running and any quarterback throwing the same windows that you're used to practicing with and the same timing that you're used to practicing with, all that stuff is disrupted now. The downside is that sometimes people are out of place and you catch a ball short and you run long. But the upside to me far outweighs the downside. And you can scheme around that. You can scheme and bracket around Tyreek Hill. Everybody knows he's an amazing talent. He can catch the ball short and run long and do all those things. But I would take my chances. I would just literally get after him, make everybody play underneath. Whatever they get short and live with that. But, that's just me. I tend to want to play defense that way.
Man, listen, I'm aggressive, just like you, Maurice. I even go back to my past life. You got to be aggressive in the club. You're in the club, there's a nice looking girl. You can't be waiting the last call. It's 145, dog.
You got to pull a stunt. You got to pull a stunt.
Listen, I ain't got no abs, bro. I ain't really no Casanova type dude. I'm kind of big. I need to wear on you a little bit. I got to grow on you. Like, dog, man, you know what? This dude, he kind of cute. He kind of funny. But you can't be sitting around waiting to 145.
11:15, 11:30.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll wait. I'll get you in there.
No, he stands at the door. He greets them as they come in. How you doing, G. Bush?
Yeah. All y'all can't talk to Maurice Clarett. Yeah, he scored touchdowns. All want to talk about. You got to come with me. I'm right with him. Like,
Maurice's philosophy is, I'm not blitzing. I'm just sitting. You know where I am, ladies.
Yeah, post it up.
All right, what's number 2, McNuggets?
G. Bush, that's going in the UCSS Analogy Hall of Fame.
That's one of the best ones.
I come back ready with analogies.
That is good. All right, question number 2. This one was not unanimous. Will Kevin Stefanski go for it on 4th down more times than Mike McDaniel? Maurice, what say you?
I'm going to say yes, because you got to win. You have to. Like the conversation that you all just had with this being, if we need a game to get to the playoffs and it's all contingent on winning this stuff, he has to be thinking that same way too. There's too much information out there in the world, and he knows where we sit in regards to the playoff race. So I'm going to say yes.
The rest of the panel?
All right, let's see it.
Let's see it, Steve.
I bet the majority said yes. There it is. Yeah, Tyvis isn't here to defend himself, but Jason, you are. Why do you think he won't go for it more?
Because I think it'll probably be the same.
Couple.
I think they're so like-minded. They're both going to go for it twice or 3 times or 4 times. I'm sort of playing the odds again.
I agree with you. I do think they're very similar in their mindsets. They're this young, renegade, wild west type coach when it comes to those situations. But the reason I said yes is, Maurice, for the exact same reason you did. I think the Browns' backs are against the wall. And I think they're going to, normally you would coach that way, particularly late in the game if you needed a score. But I think they're going to play this entire football game like it's 6 minutes to go and they're down a score. At least I hope they play with that urgency.
Well, go back to the Falcons game when they're going for it on 4th and 3 from the 4. Their thought process going into that game was, we need 6, not 3. We need 6s, not 3s.
Right.
And they'll probably have the very same mentality this week. So
I liked. You weren't here, Jay, but what I liked against the Bengals, they did something. I thought he made a nice little adjustment. We used to get on him all the time about him going forward, not understanding what the game needed at that point. I thought against the Bengals, he was up 8 points. Yeah. First of all, he went for the 2, right?
Right.
Got the penalty, went up for the 2. Cool, awesome. Then he said, my defense is playing good right now. It's before half. He could have went for that. He kicks the field goal.
Yep.
Now it's 11. 11-0 going into the half, and guess what? That 11 seemed like it was 21.
At the time, it did.
At the time, it was like,
with the way their defense was playing, you felt really comfortable with that.
Yeah. So I think he'll fill it out, and I trust him to fill a game out because this is like playoffs to me. Like you said, this is a playoff game.
Yeah, you've got to coach it like their life depends on it. Number 3, McNuggets.
Number 3, this was the most split. My favorite question of the week. Will Tyreek Hill have more receiving yards than Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones combined? Tough. Not unanimous on the panel. Maurice, which side do you fall on?
It just sounds so disrespectful. I have to say no.
Maurice, before you answer that, let me remind you of this.
Super fact.
He has more receiving yards than, 7 teams?
This is crazy.
Right there.
This is crazy.
He has more receiving yards by himself than the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Falcons, the Texans, Giants, Bears, Ravens, Titans. That's disrespectful to those teams, but
that's crazy.
Man.
That's crazy.
So I can get you. So I'm usually a fact person, and then like along the way, there's like this ego that comes in, and like when I read that question, I was like, come on, man, like I guess just my pride in being a Browns fan, I just didn't want to say yes. But the facts are the facts, and information is information, and. What do they pay him, like $25 million a year? He's earned every dollar of it, man.
He has. You're exactly right. What does the panel say?
So Maurice says no, and on this one, he sides with Tyvis, Bull, and Polk. Jay and Jason, the two J's, say he will.
Jay, you want to go?
It's close because, I mean, DBJ's having a great year.
He's really coming into his own.
So I went back and forth on this one, and honestly, when the question went up, I wasn't sure which side I finally answered on.
Yeah.
Because I could make the argument either way, but I do think, I just got done saying the way to neutralize him is to get Miles after him. But, Maurice, you said it earlier, it's the short catch and runs where he's so dangerous.
It scares the hell out of you.
Yeah, just get the ball in his hands, and who's going to catch him on this defense? And so that's ultimately why I said yes.
I think one of the problems that I have here is I cannot debulk my brain of the Browns' secondary problems through the first 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
I can't divorce myself from that. Now, if this defense plays like they did against the Bengals, now granted, they didn't have Chase playing, but if they play of that caliber where guys are clearly on the same page, because against Cincinnati, they communicated well, there weren't those breakdowns. But if they play at all like they did in the first 6 games of the season, where it was one mental breakdown after another, guys taking the wrong man, miscommunication, if they play like that, he'll have more receiving yards than probably the two of them and Njoku thrown in there.
The dangerous part is when you allow them to get free releases and you allow them to just be just really free off getting off the line of scrimmage and not too much pressure with jamming or any other of those things, playing zone. We saw it against Kansas City with Tyreek Hill. And what happened was, if you don't give them that time, they'll scramble around. And now all of a sudden, Tyreek Hill, he's a god MC when it comes to scramble drills. He'll move around and then take off this way, and you'll throw the ball, and the announcer, oh my gosh, Tyreek Hill's behind the defense. And you're like, oh God, like, that's even worse. I would rather give him sometimes the little 5-yard outs and tackle him, but I think it's even worse if you let him sit back there because now the scramble drills can look crazy.
But even the 5-yard outs, I hold my breath on those.
Maurice?
No, I tell you, yeah, where they have a lot of success with him at is that going into the season, when you line up in a certain formation, the tendencies of the defense and what they line up in. And where you run into trouble like this is that if I can force you to go into a zone scheme, and then I can force him, so I'll give you a prime example. You have a lot of stuff that's post snap reads. They'll dictate the coverage that the defense has by motioning into something or setting up into something, right? And then when the guys release off of the line, it dictates which route that the guys run. So that makes it tough on defenders because if you're a linebacker and Tyreek is about to get passed off to you because we forced you all to run some sort of zone coverage or some sort of bump and pass to the linebacker from the defensive back, that's where it gets tough. And that's where if you have more than 3, 4, 5 seconds back there at quarterback, ain't no linebacker watching that guy. You know what I'm saying?
No.
And you have situations like this or, when he takes those 5-yard outs or those hitches or those curls, they know based upon them lining, like, hey, we're going to run a smash concept. So that forces the safety to be high over up top, and they're going to run cover 2. And, there's just certain little nuances that Miami is obviously playing with, but he's basically like a cheat code. His skill set, hate it or love it, is so different, or his speed is so much different than, just an average person in the NFL, and, he's had success from it.
Yeah, he is that rare guy right now in the NFL, and you see them every so often. He's that rare guy who really, you can't prepare for him because there's not another one like him that does all of the things that he can do, and it's so hard to stop those guys. Okay, what's the next one?
We have 3 questions left in 7 minutes, so
all right.
We're going to make sure these are
move into
tight,
2-minute offense.
And they're all unanimous. So, Maurice, if you disagree, you'll be the one on the other side. But this question is, will the Browns win the turnover battle on Sunday? And keep in mind, these are 2 of the worst teams in terms of takeaways
They are.
in the
They're
NFL.
down at the bottom.
Maurice.
Wishful thinking, yes.
Maurice says yes, and so does literally everyone else we asked on the panel.
Yeah, that's
it is
bad.
a party up top of the fence.
Well, I just went with the numbers. I mean, Dolphins are second to last in the league in turnover ratio. Or takeaways, I think. They have 3.
They have 3 takeaways all season.
That's stunning to me.
Yeah.
And they have a winning record, which is even more crazy because typically if you've only taken the ball away 3 times, you're not beating teams.
No. We'll go to the next question, and please no one clip this, what I'm about to say. It's the Chubb Bowl. Will Nick Chubb have more rushing touchdowns than Bradley Chubb has sacks in the first edition of the 2022 UCSS Chubb Bowl? Maurice, you're up first.
I'm going to say yes. I looked up Bradley Chubb. He has 5.5 sacks. And so it's not like he's trending very well and knocking things out. So I'm going to say yes. Nick will win.
Maurice says yes, as does the Browns-laden Homer crowd of the UCSS panel. We all think Nick is the superior Chubb to Bradley.
Well, here's the thing. It's been proven pretty hard to get Brissett down. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how, but he's able to shake guys.
He doesn't take the
He's
sacks.
he reminds me. Please don't take this. It's the only time I'll ever say this. He's a little Brady-like. In that,
Right.
you
Clip
think
that.
you have him.
Yeah.
Right.
And it looks like he's out of oxygen.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, Brady's so crafty at a quick little turn, slide, and release. And I don't know if he learned that from playing under him in New England, but he's done that a number of times this year where I say he's Tom Brady in that regard.
I will go another Hall of Fame quarterback, and I'd say Roethlisberger because he's so big.
Yeah,
and he's able
that's
to
true.
He's just able to shake defenders off him. Where Ben was so big, it was hard to get him down.
Ben
Jacoby's
was like
much
an
the
oak
same
tree.
way.
That
Yeah.
one guy
Let me
out
tell
around
you,
his
Jacoby's the same way, man.
leg. He is a big dude.
I mean, he be running slow like when you in a dream running slow. You ever been trying to run away from somebody in your dream? You're like, I don't got no gears. Where's the third gear? There's a goblin behind me. I gotta go. Don't get up. 0.
G. Bush, you come back.
He's
you
on
could barely
fire.
talk yesterday. We talked on the phone Tuesday.
He's on
Right
fire.
was right. No, I was like, that's good. Mike, I said this to Mike Polk Jr. I like that. He's like, hey, G,
You trying out your material?
Yeah,
on
I'm
Mike?
trying out the material. Mike, he said, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
gotta
bring that.
Get to the punch quicker. You'll be all right. Yeah, all right.
All right, very well done. What's the next one?
Last question here. This is a question we've asked a few times this year, but it's even more apropos with this downfield vertical attack of the Dolphins. But will the Browns allow a pass play of at least 39.5 yards against the Dolphins? Maurice.
Yeah, I say yes just because I assume there will be a play that Tyreek Hill catches short and run long. That was my thought behind it. So I'll say yes.
The deep plays can be backbreakers. We know Tyreek could break it at any point, and Maurice agrees with, once again, everyone else on the panel. So of the 4 unanimouses, Maurice was 3 or 4 with us. And like I said, we were 3 and 5 in 8 previous unanimouses, so there's some opportunities here for us to be wrong that benefits the Browns. There's also some opportunities for us to be
Well, that
wrong
one right there would.
that crushes them. Is it the Tyreek factor, just the ability to turn a short
Yeah, I
slant,
mean, I'm
take to the house?
exactly what Maurice said. I'm not sure that it'll be a deep ball that travels 39.5 yards in the air. I think more likely it'll be a quick slant. It'll be something where he throws a wiggle on a guy and there's no deep help, and the next thing you know, he's scooting down the sidelines.
My goodness. I can almost hear it. Like, I don't know why I got this narrative in my head. I could almost feel it like the Browns dominated the whole game. Chubb scores 2 touchdowns. Jacoby Brissett has no turnovers. But the Dolphins in the fourth quarter, down like 10, throw a pass to Tyreek Hill, and he breaks one tackle, goes to the house, and now all of a sudden it's right back at another ball game.
Yeah.
I've seen him catch the ball and go to the house with people with angles on him, and
Right.
he just keeps going and it's touchdown. Like, I don't know what Kansas City was doing.
So G. Bush,
Cheat code.
do you understand what you just understand what you just said? So you just admitted, without saying it directly, that the horrible teams can't be consistent for a period of time, and that's what I was saying earlier about Northwestern, right? So you know in the back of your mind that all it takes is Tyreek just to stay focused one time and catch one pass that you believe he can. He's been consistent, right? And so coaches prey on this, right? They'll look in the first series, and right, they'll say, okay, we see how they lined up, right? And so we'll come back to Tyreek in the fourth quarter because a tired Tyreek is better than whoever it is the Browns have on defense. And that's how that stuff happens. It is just a game of averages, right? And you'll say, man, I'll take my tired Tyreek that I paid $25 million to, who runs a 4-1 against these Browns, and somebody will miss a tackle, somebody will be horrible with assignments. And when they analyze and assess a team, they understand who has mistakes, they understand who has errors, they understand who has poor tackling form, they understand who can't cover on double moves, they understand all that stuff. And when you see those guys assembled in the box, all those guys are feeding into somebody's headset in order for them to try to make those plays, depending upon the circumstance. So, I mean, you kind of proved the point that I was making about horrible teams and better teams.
Here's the only thing I'll say about the Tyreek fear, and it's real. He's got 76 catches, 3 touchdowns. 3.
That's bizarre to me.
So he's going to put them in position, but he's not the one getting them 6. So you can almost give Tyreek his yards and still win the game because he's only scored 3 times.
If it's a bend, don't break.
Right.
I don't know. My fear is looking that he's only got 3 touchdowns, and you know that the more the sample size, the more you come back to your average.
Regress to the mean.
Like, I'm afraid that he's going to put up 3 or 4.
He could.
He
has
that game-breaking ability.
It looked like he's due.
How do you explain 3 touchdowns?
3.
So he has 76 catches and 3 touchdowns.
That's so weird.
Mike Gesicki, their tight end, has 22 catches and 5 touchdowns. And
I mean, obviously he's a bigger target, so the red zone threat.
Yeah.
But I just can't believe that he hasn't gotten loose more than 3 times.
I know. I'm just saying, like, there's a path to let Tyreek be Tyreek, and you're going to get gashed.
Right.
And you still win the game because you're keeping him out of the end zone.
Maurice, before we let you go, it's my contention that the pivotal player in this game will be Denzel Ward. We don't even know if he's going to play or not. If he plays, he's got to play like the old Denzel Ward from last year, not the guy that we've seen for most of this year. What's your take on that? Should they man Ward against Hill? How would you defend Hill?
I would man him. I feel like this. I would man him because, as a coach, I would want to challenge him and force him to say, hey, man, you have to get this thing back in gear. There's no better way to get in gear than to take one of the top dogs in the NFL and just plaster you on him and hope that you raise to that level of competition, right? You don't give nobody $70 million or whatever they gave Denzel and not believe that he has something inside of him, right? And sometimes just the best way to do something is to put the best, put you against the best person and hope that the better, or hope that his talent brings the best out of you. Yeah. And so let me tell you this: you don't get to $70 million on accident, right? And I don't think that Denzel, after meeting him as a person, I don't think he's a bad kid. I think he's like a very humble, respectful, good guy. But maybe he just needs to go back to the drawing board in the off season. Maybe he did too many interviews and too many leisurely things, post contract. But I think he can click it back on. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I like what you said about let's our stud on your stud, see who wins, and also the fact that it's almost like the hitter in baseball that's having a terrible series, then comes up in a huge spot in game 6 or 7, and he gets that one home run, and all is forgotten. If he can man Hill and lock him up, and the Browns win this game, that's going to erase a lot of the warts that we've seen from him earlier this year, and I think he knows that. Big challenge, and I love what you said. Big-time players want to step up, and they want to be against the best player on the other team. So hopefully he's healthy, he's on the field, and we'll see what happens. Maurice, always good to see you. I want to ask you about the Buckeyes. They're playing Indiana. You don't see another playing down to the competition, do you? This should be a really easy one.
No. The last week allows Ryan Day to get in these guys' butt to let them know that they did horrible, right? So they'll come back into this week preparing, right? Mm-hmm. So what's up in a couple weeks, right? So then you have to play well this week, and then you have to play very well the week prior to Michigan, and you want to roll into that week and then roll into the playoffs. But they got this game out of their system, but there's still stuff that they need to develop. They still need reps. They still need other people to get the ball besides Marvin Harrison Jr. You need to see if we're going to have 2 games or 3 games with JSN. He's another name that I mess up, right? Yeah. You have to have a few games with him. You have to get the Mayan Williamson. You have to get him the ball, and he needs his reps now that he's come back from his injury. So the Buckeyes have a few things to figure out. But I'll tell you this, and I'll say it on this show, and you can take this as a soundbite. The Buckeyes don't have the level of nastiness that Michigan has. Ooh. If you look at Michigan, and I know I'm looking forward, yes, I'm telling you this. You can't win a championship without that stuff that you see what Georgia did to Tennessee.
Yep.
Georgia plays with a level of disrespectful nastiness. I'm serious. This is how you win. You can't win with cute guys. You can't win with 5-star, I put up a bunch of stats guys, right?
You need some dogs.
Nastiness.
You need some dogs.
Man, when I look at Michigan, and I'm telling you this right now, what fears me most is that these dudes are nasty, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And they beat Ohio State up last year. And, I don't know how you neutralize nastiness, because nastiness can make, great players turn into chumps. And that's, I'm saying it right now, that's what I fear with Michigan coming up. But they'll play better. They'll beat these guys. But the game I'm worried about is Michigan. But I'll tell you like this right now, I don't see nobody beating Georgia. If Georgia do what they did to Tennessee last week,
yeah, I agree.
They'll be celebrating again in Athens.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the way things are trending right now. And you can't fake nasty either. You can't manufacture it. It's in you or it's not. And right now, I agree with you. I think there's a little bit of softness to this Buckeye team. Maurice, thanks so much. Have a great week. We'll check with you next week, my friend.
All right.
Always good. The great Maurice Clarett. We've talked about this a lot with the Browns, that they don't seem to have that nasty streak. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed the same thing with Ohio State. I saw it first against the Notre Dame game. I thought there were times where they should have been angry and stepped up, and somebody should have kind of, riled the troops, and I didn't see it. I haven't seen it from them all year long. All right, we're excited right now because we love when we have folks that are outside the sports universe but that are big sports fans on the program. Sam Jaeger's a guy who is up-and-coming actor. He's got this Netflix thing we want to talk to him about. I know as you're seeing him right now, you're going, oh, yeah, I know that guy. He is a huge Browns fan. He's a huge Buckeye fan. Sam, welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. It's great to have you on, man.
Guys, thanks for having me. It's a thrill, like legit honor to be with you guys.
Well, we're glad to have you for sure. Tell us about the origins of your Buckeye fandom. I mean, most of us are born into this nonsense. How did you become a Browns and a Buckeye fan?
Same deal. All my siblings, I have 3 older siblings. They all went to Ohio State. My daughter went to Ohio State, my stepdaughter, and I went to school in Otterbein. I grew up in Perrysburg in Northwest Ohio.
Nice.
And my dad was is a long-suffering Indians/Guardians fan. But man, that guy copes really well with loss in a way that I admire. I was like, man. I mean, I tell you what, how are we supposed to beat the Yankees when they're making $200 million more than we are?
Exactly.
And my dad was just like, well, we had a great season, and I had a great time watching them.
You know what it is,
no,
Sam?
Dad, that's not fair. It's not fair. Take the Yankees.
But Sam, here's the deal, because I feel your dad's pain. I really do. And I watched my dad kind of go through that evolution, and now I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, trust me, he does it.
It's experience. When you've been through so many heartbreaking defeats, so many disappointing series ends, at some point it's just, throw another log on the fire. Here we go again.
Exactly.
You'll get there, Sam.
I tell you what went a long way was that 2006 game against Urban Meyer's Gators. That hurt so badly.
Oh, God.
That after that, I was just like, you know what? It's not as bad as the 2006 National Championship game. Everything after that is just like, it hurts, but what are you going to do?
That did set the bar.
Sam, we had Anthony Gonzalez on a few weeks ago, of course, the receiver on that team now in politics, living in the political world. And I was an Ohio State beat writer back at that time. I was covering Ohio State, and the rumor was Ted Ginn was the entire game plan against that game.
Yeah.
And, of course, he gets hurt. Roy Hall tackles him in the end zone, busts up his ankle, and the whole game plan went out the window. And Anthony confirmed it. He said, yeah, that's true. The entire plan, they're going to put Ted in the Wildcat. They had Ted lined up all over the field. And on the opening kickoff, the entire game plan for that game disintegrated before their eyes. And you sort of saw that play out. They could not move the ball against Florida that day.
No. I kind of feel the same about when Sermon went out in the COVID game against Alabama in the national championship 2 years ago. I was like, I have a feeling, I mean, that guy he was like Ezekiel Elliott level by the end of that season. And when he went out, I was like, I don't think we're getting back in this game. I think a lot.
Yeah, and your premonition was exactly right.
Again, I was like, yeah, that was a bad game. But still not as bad as that national championship.
And Sam, what people forget is they came right back after that and played LSU. Beanie Wells breaks off this huge run, and you're like, oh, they're ready to go. Here we go. Let's run it up, boys. And then
that was it.
That was done.
Yeah. That's the hard part about rooting for 20-year-olds. Isn't it? I mean, you're just like, I put all my time and energy into this, and they're just like, they're so
fickle
emotional.
Kids.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that.
That's crazy.
I have a 20-year-old right now, and it's like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
No. And it's literally his day is determined on whether he eats Fruity Pebbles or Frosted Wheats in the morning. You're just like, how are you supposed to... That's why it's a miracle when you have a winning season. You're just like, to get all these kids corralled and focused and like Maurice was saying, get them angry or find some sort of level of aggression that they need to harness. That's hard to do over a whole season with college kids.
It really is. And now that you have, the fear of losing all the money for these either upper class, the kids that know they're going to the NFL, you kind of watch and you're looking at them in the game and they're going, he doesn't care. He's not even trying. And you're a grown-ass man sitting in a chair rooting for a 19 or 20-year-old who's about to go make $8 million a year, and he's just, in his mind, he's got to be laughing that he has such control over grown men's emotions.
Crazy.
Oh, completely. I don't know if I was Jackson Smith and Jigba, if I would come back to play.
I had a conversation with a friend yesterday.
Oh, no.
Same conversation.
Yeah.
I did. Look what he has to lose.
Yeah. He's going to be, top 2 receivers out in the draft. And
he's going to make a boatload of money.
Yeah, yeah.
And he doesn't want to go out and get hurt.
Yeah. And a lot of these guys grew up in a situation where they had the opposite of that. And so if they're thinking about, well, I want to help out my family and do all that stuff, I'm not going to blame them. I mean, of course.
Yeah,
that's one of the great things about this NIL thing.
Hey, I noticed the H on the left sleeve, so I know that's an homage shirt, and then I saw a glimpse of Cedar Point. As a Sandusky kid, I love the fact that you're wearing a Cedar Point shirt. Favorite ride at the park?
Ooh.
I know that's tough.
That is tough. This is so funny. My 12-year-old is obsessed with roller coasters, but also terrified of them. So I get so many questions about, like, Dad, what's your top 3 rides at Cedar Point? Like, weekly. And I think I got to go, Millennium.
Millennium is great.
But I think Maverick is just so fun.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a different one. I love Steel Vengeance. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for me, it's the prototypical roller coaster. It's got all the thrills that you want. They're putting a new one in right now. It's like the mouse ride or some I don't know what it is, but I think they're going to be individual cars that actually spin while you're going through the roller coaster, and that might be too much for me. That might be too much. I don't know.
Yeah,
hey,
it's
Sam,
funny. We go out to the Magic Mountain out here, and it was like, it's a long time competitor of Cedar Point, and it doesn't have the same magic as that park. There's just something about pulling into Sandusky and seeing it across the water and pulling up.
You're so true.
It was I like every summer I'd be like, hey, which church groups from Perrysburg are going? Because we got
he's right.
that I'm there at least 4 times this summer. So I was like, okay, I'm going to Zora Lutheran is traveling on the 23rd. Grace United.
Sam, there's an attendance policy for them Sunday schools though. In the summer camp, you got to at least go to 85% before they let you on that trip. I didn't try.
They got smart.
You got 2 more weeks. You can't miss.
Go up for Cedar Point Day. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to talk to you about Devlin, Ohio, but first, hand to God, I swear, I don't know if she's watching. My wife just texted me and said, you better tell Sam how much I love Joel on Parenthood. We watched every episode. We watched the entire series.
It's a great
It was
show.
our favorite show at the time. I was so sad it went off. It was a massive cast. I can't believe NBC could afford to pay you guys as long as they did. It lasted as long as it did. What was that like? It was This Is Us before This Is Us. For the youngins who like This Is Us, Parenthood was before This Is Us. How did that happen for you? How did you get on there? And just take us through what that show was like for you.
Yeah, I think the reason it wasn't as big a hit as This Is Us is it was called Parenthood. And so I think people who were like, well, that's not me. I'm not a parent. But watching that show, I was always like watching the teenagers thinking, boy, that is exactly what being a teenager is like, the struggles, and I think that's what kept us alive is that we, all the stories resonated with anybody who's a family, family man, a mother, a kid. But I came onto that show. It was like they didn't know what to do with my character to start off because he was and I was the last person cast, strangely enough, and I didn't find this out until we were shooting the pilot. One of the producers at NBC said my character was a stay-at-home dad
contractor.
Yeah. And the producer said, "You know why it was so hard to cast your role?" And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because my boss is a working woman with a stay-at-home husband, and her boss is a working woman with a stay-at-home husband."
Wow.
So there was a lot of discussion about what your character was supposed to be. and I said, the question is whether they were trying to cast for what they wanted their husbands to actually be or whether they were trying to cast what their husbands were. I don't know. But it was...
Sam, I got to ask this question. Got to get to it. Now, I'm a former football player in college. So when you play football, you got to have all these you lift weights, you run, you do drills specific to what you do, just so you can go out and prepare and play on Saturdays or Sundays in the NFL. Now, for you, a lot of people don't understand what is your training routine when you are trying to learn a script and learn your lines. Are they putting you through some sort of drill? Do you have something special you do, like your process to learning a script, and how fast do you usually retain the knowledge?
That's a good question. Unless they just kind of leave you to your own devices. If it's, a character you got to build and memorize, you better show up and be memorized. And I've been on sets with somebody just doesn't have the material. So you gotta work. I have an app that just kind of repeats all the dialogue so I can memorize it over a couple of days. But I usually start looking at the material 2 days before I get to a scene. Otherwise, if I look at it the night before and show up on set, I'm not as sharp as I should be. I went to Otterbein University and learned a bunch there about how to prepare. But it's pretty nuts. You just got to be like, you got to train yourself and keep sharp. And luckily, I'm surrounded by really talented people, and I don't want to drop the ball. So I'm always trying to, you always got to keep learning, right? The second you stop and think, well, I'm pretty comfortable. That's when you start to, lose your edge. And I always want to be hungry.
Sam, I'm fascinated with the journey. There are so many folks that did everything you did. They went to the right college, they studied, they thought they were ready for it. But the number of folks that toil forever and never get those big credits like you've had and those big opportunities, what is that like? It's almost like trying to become a professional athlete. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody wants to do it, but there's a tough barrier to entry. Tell us a little bit about your journey. I know you said you went to Otterbein, but how did this whole thing unfold for you?
Well, it's interesting. When I got to college, I was one of the youngest to be a lead in the play there. I don't think they'd had any freshmen who were leads in the plays at Otterbein until I got there. And by the end of my time there, I don't know. Theater is a weird thing because you want to instill confidence in kids, and I was lucky enough to be as cocky coming out of school as I was going in. And I think a lot of kids got told over years, like, yeah, you got this, you got to work on this. And I just happen to look like a 40-year-old at 20. So I got all the juicy parts. It's a relief to finally look my age now. But, I think I just kept on. Here's a good story for you. My son is obsessed with Legos, and he wanted to enter the Lego competition. And he started looking at the other competitors that were posting their stuff, and he was like, why are we even going to submit? We're just going to lose. And I said, buddy, my whole career is lost. It's just accepting loss at every level. I get 1 out of every 20 jobs. And so there's 19 jobs that I just kind of accept, and I have a whole Rolodex of coping skills that I pull out. I'm like, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be. Or I pull out the next one and it says, oh, is that who you guys went with? Well, you have terrible taste. I wouldn't want to be a part of that production anyway. So it's just a whole, there's a whole list of things where it's kind of shrugging off all the rejection you get and just persevering. It's like Harrison Ford once said, a whole bunch of kids got off a bus and I just never got back on the bus and went back to the town I grew up in. And so
you just keep going, keep trying.
Yeah. That plus extreme luck, kind of those things have to combine in order to keep this career going. So I've been lucky to work with great people and hopefully that continues.
Well, this is the first time and last time you'll ever be asked a question by a guy named McNuggets, but our producer's dying to ask a question. So, Mikey, go ahead.
Yeah, Sam, hey, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. In doing some research, I saw you're attached to the new Saw movie that's either going to be filmed next year or coming out. And do you know about this? Or do you know you're attached?
No.
Well, wow, congratulations. You just got a job.
We heard the new Saw movie. So if not, this question is completely irrelevant then. So I'm gonna ignore this question.
Yeah, I mean.
I told you it's the last time you're going to be asked a question by a guy named McNuggets.
It's the last question I'm ever asking on the show ever. I can't believe the internet anymore.
This dude is like,
I was told to believe everything on the internet.
It's the wrong blue check mark on Twitter, right?
No, it's on IMDb. I'm looking at it right now. It says Sam Yeager and Emma D'Arcy from House of Dragons are the two co-stars of this.
That's a
Congratulations,
good
Sam.
That's a good call. Hey,
this is great, man. This is great. Hey, we heard it here. Thanks for keeping me employed.
That's fantastic.
Go call his
What's your
agent.
favorite job, Sam? What's the one role that you've enjoyed more than any other?
Well, Parenthood was special because it was, it was a great time, being. I was a young dad, and so I could kind of take everything that was happening in my life and take it into work with me. But also, doing Handmaid's Tale right now is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, watching all those, the cast, and we're 5 seasons in, and everybody's still trying to make the show better, and that's a real treat.
Some actors and actresses don't like to talk about this, and I'll totally understand if you want to take a pass. But I always like asking, what was the role that got away? The one that you really wanted, you thought you had a chance, but you didn't get. Do you have one of those?
No,
Wow.
I will say I auditioned for, again, I gotta come up with these coping skills, but I don't like to look back and try and say what could have been. I will say that I put myself on tape for the Macbeth movie that one of the Coen brothers did.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, that's the best work I've ever done that nobody will see the light of, it'll never see the light of day. But
Wow.
there's But there's also, it's a strange career. Like I did right after Parenthood, I did 2 TV shows. I was the lead on 2 shows. One was produced by Spielberg, and both of them were on a network where they had a new head of the network, and so they didn't want any of the old shows. And so I did 2 shows that will never see the light of day. And those are the things that are hard, because you put all your time and you go travel. Like my family traveled to New Zealand for this one Spielberg production.
Wow.
And the network was like, no. And so,
we don't want that.
Yeah, that's tough. It's got to be
Yeah.
done. We got to get your thoughts on the Browns. We're kind of looking
Denzel
at the
Ward
Dolphins.
is playing, by the way. He just said he is playing this
wonderful.
weekend. As in the
Okay.
last minute and a half, Denzel Ward.
That's a huge plus. I've been saying all week long, if Denzel doesn't play, this is a hard L. I think they've got a serious chance. Now, this to us, it feels, Sam, like it's a playoff game because you start doing the math, you start looking at the schedule going forward. Somehow you've got to get to 6-5, and for that to happen, they've got to beat 3 really good teams. I mean, Tampa Bay with Tom Brady can be great. They can also be, kind of a question mark. But we're looking at as a playoff game and a must-win. What have you made of what we've seen from the Browns so far, and what do you think about what this team could be moving forward with Deshaun Watson?
Boy, that's a tough one. The verdict's out on the Deshaun Watson of it all. I still feel like they would have been better off saying, we're going to take our shots with kind of anybody else. When you have people that are waiting for someone to come in and kind of holding the fort, that's a precarious position to be in. And then the pressure's going to be on when he comes back. There's suddenly going to be this powerhouse, and that's hard. You just don't add one person and immediately go, you're a 5-star team. So they got a lot of great elements, and they're a tenacious team. But I think Clarett was right. You want a little bit more nasty, and I just feel like they're waiting. They're in this holding pattern. So I think this is a crucial game. If they lose one more, I think it's numbers. Getting into the playoffs with one more loss at this stage would be pretty harmful.
Yeah, the margin of error really goes away. If you're sitting at 6 losses and you're 9 games in, it's just about, they say you are what your record says you are. Mm-hmm. At that point, you are a 3-6. And trying to turn that around somehow would be next to impossible.
I got two. I got 2 questions completely unrelated. I'm going to smash them together and make one. Number one, I want to go back to Parenthood. I'm still hung up on Parenthood. You worked with a very, very young Michael B. Jordan on the set.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what that was like, if you saw then what he has become, if you saw that in his future. And then also, tell us a little about Devil in Ohio on Netflix now. There's a lot of Cleveland gear in that show, and how much say did you have in that is the character, not the character, but in sort of like the background setting and all that.
Yeah. Well, to Michael B., I mean, he was just a sweet kid. He was a talented, sweet, tenacious kid. So I just think his career took off. He happened to be at the right place at the right time. He's talented. He's thoughtful. My closest friend, Jonathan Majors, is in Creed 3 with him coming up, and that's very much, he's one of those guys that I met on a project years back, and I thought, this kid is he's a firebrand. He's in the new movie Devotion coming up, which he's fantastic in. But it's just it's exciting to watch these young guys come up and take over the world. As far as Devil in Ohio is concerned, that is, I was stunned because we shot that in Vancouver, and when I showed up on set,
Vancouver's nothing like Cleveland.
I know, it felt like they did such a good job. One of the producers spent a good chunk of her childhood in Ohio. So when I showed up on set, I said, it's funny, if anybody came to this set and saw how many pictures of like Ohio Stadium are up, and that people have a framed Ohio State logo above their mantle, they'd be like, this is a little overboard. People in Ohio don't really decorate their homes in scarlet and gray. And the answer is they absolutely do. A framed picture of the horseshoe, that's not uncommon in Ohio. So it was really awesome to step on set and be like, hey, we're in Vancouver, but I feel like, somebody's a Buckeye here. You guys got this.
Yeah, just to know that that's a real thing.
Yeah.
They do that indeed. Hey, listen, Sam, we can't thank you enough for coming on the program. We'll be looking for you in Saw. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, by the way,
Hold on. A little vindication. Let's take tag board full. Once again, I know the internet doesn't lie, but it does say that is Sam Jaeger and Emma DRC. So hand up my bad. I'll never ask a question again. I'm so sorry.
You better call your agent, Sam. I think you got another job coming.
Right on that. Boy, I'm excited. There's a check in the mail.
He's allegedly in song.
I might as well go ahead and leak the information that you in House of Dragons season 2.
Let's do it.
You're actually riding one of Daenerys' dragons that came back from the dead. So here you go.
You bet, man. You bet.
Sam, continued success, man. Thanks for joining us on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
Thanks, man.
We appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
It's always fun to see guys, local guys.
Yeah.
You know, Perrysburg, Northwest Ohio, but I went to Bowling Green, so I'm very familiar with where that is from Sandusky. It's always fun to watch local guys work at their craft and become, this force in their field.
Yeah.
And they carry where they're from, where they made it to.
Oh, sure.
And he's one of those guys.
He's hilarious.
Yeah,
Like,
he is.
The
Very
Joel
good.
character on Parenthood was quiet, is always very calm. And very
Right. I
quiet,
remember the
very-
character.
Yeah.
That was the writing on that show was
Spectacular.
There's nothing on network television that even approaches. I thought
completely
Parenthood
agree.
and This Is Us, for me, is sort of that's the last great television that we may ever see again on broadcast television.
It's
because
all
now
on
the good
Netflix.
stuff is on stream.
Yep, Hulu and all
Yes,
that.
that's crazy you said that. Wow, you are right. Like,
I remember the Parenthood. Well, the one thing that stood out to me about Parenthood was it seemed like each show was a major motion picture. The editing was terrific.
Yeah.
The acting was out of this world, and I'm with you too. And I said this on This Is Us too. How are they keeping this cast together?
The cast was massive.
And
on
they're
Parenthood.
making mega money.
Yeah, and big names.
Like 15 A-list names. Yet the show just kept going. And
Cleveland's Monica Potter was on.
Monica
that.
Potter
And
was great
Greg T.
on that
Nelson.
show.
that's when them sponsors show up. When them sponsors show up, you looking crazy. They're like, oh, we can pay that. Speaking of, you might want to subscribe to the channel.
Oh, nice segue.
Yeah, you see what I did right
I'm
there?
glad you're here today because yesterday I was trying to sell this, and it's like a cigar trying to sell a nun trying to sell a cigar. So I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm talking about.
So this is for a lot of people on the internet, this is your show, right? We all have something that we watch and we love it. When I was coming up, it was Martin. When I was coming up, it was on one day a week, and I did whatever come hell or high water. I was at the house ready to watch it. There's a lot of shows that are transitioned to YouTube, and believe it or not, I see people in the street all the time that say, listen, you don't understand. I watch that show every day. People write and say, listen, G. Bush, man, look, I live in Wisconsin. I live in Kentucky. I just love the fact that, like, when I turn it on, it reminds me of Cleveland, and
Takes
this
you
is
home.
my show.
Yeah.
And so these are just ways to be more interactive with the show, man. You got a $4.99 things, and it's not even about the $4.99. It's just the fact that there's more content, is more. You're able to get into more depth with the people that you see every day.
We're going to eventually do some meet and greets too with the coaches tier folks. So we'll have get-togethers with these super fans, and for lack of a better word, I guess these people that are in the coach tier membership. But that's going to be fun to actually get to meet some of the biggest fans of the show and,
and how
do a little show on the road where they're part of it.
How often does that happen? You watch your favorite show, and you're never going to meet those people.
No.
You're never going to talk to them. Hey, look.
Unless you're on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and you can talk to Sam Jaeger.
Hey, one day if they sign up, they may even say, listen, I'm going to let you text somebody. I will give my number away. You can text me. See, look, bro, it's just,
He may not answer for 12 hours or
Oh, yeah.
2 days.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he
You
is
can't
slow.
text him.
I
G-Bush is
never
slow
said
text man.
I never said when it was going to get a reply, but I will reply. We're still talking about the
can text.
Bengals game. You can text. I'll be there.
4 days for
Sam
an
was
answer.
good, by the way. Going back to him, I thought he was he was
Great
a
interview.
guest.
Yeah, like,
he was great.
Good guy.
Minus my snafu, hand up. But
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That
No,
was awesome.
I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll end up in Saw.
Maybe
Maybe they cast him and
if
he
he
doesn't know
does, we
it
have
yet.
to go back to that
he
clip.
really didn't deny it. Sometimes they can't tell him.
Yeah, I know, but he was
he was like,
He did have that look on his face, like, where are you
wait,
going
I
with
have?
this?
McNuggets, that can only happen to you. That can only happen to you.
Listen. I asked Anthony to look it up to confirm it. and
Yeah.
it was it's IMDb. That's not like the Elon Musk fake blue check mark IMDb. Like that is the IMDb.
Yeah, but you know what? They have me in movies that I was never in. I don't even know why I have a page. I
But
guess
it's because
of
you
the
were
Rocky.
in. They showed a clip of First Take, and you were technically in it.
Yeah,
But
I
but
know,
the thing
and-
is, it hasn't been shot or filmed yet, so it's just attached.
I know,
to
but
it.
call mine up. And people tell me all the time, hey, loved you in this. And I go, wasn't me, bro. I don't know why the hell they have my name in there.
Hey.
It was not me.
Hey, let me listen. Let me tell Jay something here. Never let your truth get in the way of a good story, my man. The answer is, hey, man, I saw you in Creed 3, G. Bush. Man, I appreciate that.
No, it was Rocky. Well, I don't even know what the movie was. It was Rocky.
You were in Rocky 3 according to IMDb.
No, Balboa.
Balboa, yeah.
Yeah, which was like 6. I don't know.
Speaking of good stories, by the way, Aditi got stung by a bee, so she's taking care of that real quick.
No.
She's going to hop on when she's done, but let's talk a little Cavs before Aditi, or we're not going to get
Do we have
to? Do
I'm so disappointed about what happened last night.
I feel like we do have to talk about it
Jay,
at
that
least a
was
little
so
bit
weak.
ahead of.
Jay just airballed from like 8 feet.
I'm 0 for the show.
He pulled a Darius Garland.
What happened to us last night? I know
Good.
I went to bed. I didn't see the whole
watched
thing,
it.
but I watched the highlights this morning and I read a couple game recaps. And McNuggets, you sent the line, some of the notes from the box. So they lost 127-120. If you would have told me before the game that they were going to shoot 53% from the floor, over 43% from three-point range, this was the most stunning stat in a regular season basketball game I've seen in a long time. The Kings had 2 offensive rebounds all night. 2.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
Donovan Mitchell had 38 points, and they lost by 7. What the hell happened?
Game was close. They got off to a horrible start. Like they just
They
did no
they dig a
energy. And the defense at the point of attack was poor. They just kept getting to the
That's
lane.
the first time I've seen just bad defense.
Yeah.
And so is it the West Coast legs? Is it, it's not like it was back to back.
No, I mean the West Coast trips are a grind.
They're tough.
And it's not going to get any easier. Now you got Golden State. You come home for one. The first game home off a West Coast trip is brutal, and then they're right back out to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So they're in the teeth of it, or they're getting to be in the teeth of it. Last night it felt to me like they were just trying to outshoot their mistakes. Did not play well defensively. Got in a big hole early, and then Donovan just tried to outshoot them, tried to shoot them out of it. And
Garland had a
it
bad
just didn't
night.
work. Yeah, he did have a bad night.
He's playing. Is he sick?
Yeah, he was under the weather last night.
He's had 2 in a row. He got 2 in a row. I thought he played the fourth quarter of the game against the Clippers. He threw the ball away a few times. He looks, and I get it. This was going to happen anyway. Like you said, Jason, he just looks indecisive because I still don't think they understand where they fit in it. I think sometimes they have a propensity to play iso ball a little bit, or just run pick and roll, high pick and roll. And, sometimes, that ball movement that we were seeing with Donovan Mitchell when Darius wasn't there, it's easier to play with less talent sometimes. It's easier to say, okay, well, I got Jetty. I'm going to take this shot. But when you're still trying to figure out where you go, I just think sometimes they get bogged down a little bit.
I think they're 2 really talented players, and they're going to figure it out. So I preface everything else I'm going to say with they are going to figure it out.
Yeah. In some regards, they already have.
Yeah.
But then this happens. You're like, what happened?
But the caveat is.
Well, no, I was just like, my one hang-up on the Donovan trade in the first place was, man, Darius played so well last year with the ball in his hands. Just let him go. Just put the ball in his hands and let him go. And we saw it with Colin and Darius, and they couldn't figure it out. Like it was a tough pair. And then as soon as Colin was removed from that is when Darius flourished. And so my point was like, just don't mess with a good thing. Just leave the ball in Darius's hands. And so some of that clunky. Now listen, is it the eye? Is it the fact he's sick? It's just a couple of bad games.
Yeah.
And there's too much talent. I do think they'll figure it out. But it is an adjustment for Darius now playing without the ball in his hands. And the Cavs at the time of the trade, I've said it multiple times on the show, the Cavs like, listen, it's going to be fine. We have a bunch of metrics that Darius is great with the ball out of his hands. He's going to be just fine. And I do think they're going to figure it out. I think this is an adjustment period for Darius. Now, again, going back to not always having the ball in his hands, not always making it go, Donovan's going to have the ball a lot. And it's just an adjustment for Darius to get back to that. And I think eventually they will. They are going to figure it out. This is the growing pains of putting 2 ball-dominant guys together.
Yeah,
Do you think there's an issue with the close, like in the Clippers game, right? Donovan had it cooking, right? And it looked like Darius was, usually last year you wouldn't care because those are the shots he's going to take. Sure. He needs to shoot the ball. But it seemed as if a little bit where it was one of those things where you would like to see Donovan get a couple more shots if he has it going. And I don't know if JB is monitoring this, but I think it is important to say that maybe he may need to stagger him a little bit, maybe get him one guy on the court at one time, one guy on the court another time. But in the crunch time, do you think it's pertinent that they have to have a guy that says, this is the dude who's going to initiate in crunch time.
It's going to be Donovan more times than not. Occasionally, it might be.
But
Darius.
he doesn't always have to do all the lifting.
No, he doesn't. But to this point, he has. Like it's always been
well, in the
Donovan.
Clippers game, he took one shot the last 7 minutes, and you saw what happened.
Right.
You
That's
cannot
true.
blow a 13-point lead in 4 minutes.
Right.
You
That's
can't
crazy.
do that.
Last night it was more defensively than anything, and JB said after the game they played arrogant and to think that they can just they've gotten off to these slow starts lately, and they think that they can catch up later, they can make it up later, and that goes back to this team plays so hard all the time. You can steal wins just by playing hard, but that includes the first quarter. And
you
a
can't
lot
dig
of
yourself that big a hole.
No, they're not at that point yet. A lot of veteran teams that play for April, May, and June that have had a lot of playoff success, you can get away with bad first quarters. You can get away with playing hard, 5, 6, 7 minutes a night. I've said this before, but the Cavs title team contenders, you could watch it. Like when I watch them every night, you could watch, okay, here they go. Like they're going to play hard for these 5, 6, 7 minutes, put the game away, and then it's back to cruise control.
Right.
This team is not at that level. They can't get away with doing stuff like that.
And I'm glad they're not.
Yeah.
You don't want to rest on that and rely on that. But it almost feels like last night when they fell down big, they had a good third quarter, but I think that took so much energy digging out of that first half hole.
Right.
They didn't have it when they needed it in the fourth quarter. McNuggets?
2 things real quick. I mean, they were only down 6 points at the end of the 5 points at the end of the first quarter, so it wasn't that
but
that big of a hole. They were down double digits a little earlier. At halftime, it was 9.
Yeah.
It wasn't crazy.
No, but
it was what we talked about yesterday.
You don't want to have to dig out of it.
They've given up 60-plus points 3 straight games.
That's what's concerning to me. What's concerning to me was I thought that this team looked great defensively at times during the first 10 games, and last night it seemed like defense was optional.
It's what we talked about yesterday. We wanted to see them come out and not overlook it, but not overlooking something either because Aditi had to push her hip back a sec. We got Bull on. So, Bull,
good.
I know
Okay.
you watched the game yesterday. What were your thoughts on the Cavs dropping their second straight on the West Coast trip?
Yeah, guys, good to see everybody. Good to see G back in
Good
studio.
to see you, Bull.
I'm glad. I hope you're feeling a little. I know you're feeling a little better.
How are
I
you
know you're
feeling,
not totally
Bull?
better,
You
good?
back up to full strength?
I'm like 95% better,
good.
but
Good.
fortunately, G didn't have COVID, so he can come back as soon as he's feeling better.
Right.
Because I had COVID, even though I'm doing better, I gotta, I won't be able to come back in studio until Tuesday, assuming I test negative twice. But in terms of the game, guys, I actually watched it this morning. I could not stay up, so I DVR'd the game, and I didn't look at the score, and then I watched the game this morning. Yeah, obviously it was a terrible performance, and Darius Garland just, had one of those days. I'm not worried about him at all. But I think you have to balance, right? Because we all know, and Jason, you know this better than anybody from covering the league, that the NBA regular season really, even for a team like the Cavs, I don't think it means that much. Like on a game-in and game-out basis, we have such a football mentality in this town that sometimes we react to basketball and baseball games like they're football games, which you can't. But I think in the same vein, it was interesting, as you said, Jason, that both Donovan Mitchell and Coach Bickerstaff made the point of saying, yeah, you don't want to make too big a deal of it, but you want to correct the mistakes you're making because that, if you don't correct mistakes you're making and you just say, well, it's, November in the NBA, who cares? Then eventually those become habits.
That's
and then
exactly
it becomes
what I
a
was gonna
problem,
say.
Right? When the games do really matter. So
Right. It's
this
not
taking it easy. Go ahead.
Well, no, what you were saying earlier about the regular season doesn't really matter. I disagree with that because this team hasn't accomplished anything. And the regular season is about building the right habits and building good habits. And you can't start falling into bad habits thinking, oh, it's okay, it's only November, we got plenty of time. Because I've said repeatedly on the show, the postseason is nothing like the regular season, and that's true. And the regular season has no bearing on the postseason, and that's true. But this is a young team that outside of Donovan has no playoff experience, so they need the regular season to build those habits, to be in close games, to understand how to defend, how to initiate Darius and Donovan to play together. So it sounds like it's doublespeak, but I'm trying not to be, that the regular season has no bearing on the postseason, but the regular season builds the habits that are necessary for the postseason. So they need to take this seriously. This team hasn't done anything. They made the play-in last year. So what?
Well, to your point, that's why the regular season this year is so important.
Yes.
Because last year, the lesson that they learned was they went hard, and after the All-Star break, it was they went stretches where they couldn't find offense, and they missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I would think that they would be looking at this regular season and say, okay, focus for 82. It's a full, you got to run through the tape, And then when you get to the playoffs, then you can start learning those lessons. But they learned a valuable lesson last year, I hope.
Yeah.
In that they took for granted they were going to be a playoff team, and they were not.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. Let me just clarify what I meant exactly. What I mean by saying the regular season doesn't matter is this loss specifically to Sacramento in November doesn't really matter.
Correct.
Of
Just
course,
like the wins over
things.
Boston
In the
don't
micro,
matter.
you're right. But we're talking in the macro. I think the macro of the season, there are some lessons they have to learn, and they do need to play like it's a big deal, because it is.
Yeah.
Not every night, but in the macro, I think it is.
No, I agree with you. I just think what I mean more is just like, I think sometimes people react to this game like the loss to Sacramento is not going to come back to haunt them this season, like the Browns' loss to the Jets could come back to haunt them, right?
But you got 82
but
of
yes,
these.
But you want those to start building the good habits instead of the bad. And JB's point about them being arrogant in first halves, as you said, Jason, this team has no right to be arrogant about anything because they've accomplished nothing.
Right.
We know they have a lot of talent, but as a team, they have zero accomplishments. So, and I don't think they actively were being cocky about it, but I think the way he put it makes a lot of sense.
Bull, I'll throw this out to you guys. For me, I look at a lot of different training, and I'm not saying that wars or armies are the same as sports, but the other day I was watching, people go through Navy SEALs training, right? And they talked about how many people they have originally, how they sleep basically 3 hours in about 5-6 days. They're treading water, doing all this crazy stuff, right? And it doesn't really have anything to do with necessarily with their craft. What they're trying to do is get mentally and psychologically prepared to push yourself at a limit where you don't think you can go. And I think sometimes in college, you do that conditioning and you lift these weights, and I look back on it and say, how the heck did I even survive? And the reason you do survive is because they've built that mental toughness in you, that when you have to do something physical that long and you go past the point where you don't even think you could wake up or do it no more, and you pass it, it builds something in you. So when I look at the Cleveland Cavaliers and the way they play the game, JB is right. They need to instill the defense, the want to, and it takes someone being mentally prepared to do it rather than physically. Because this one thing that we all know they can do it physically, but the mental aspect is, can you push past walls? Can you say Sacramento is the same as Golden State and I'm going to play as hard as I can defensively? That takes mental and intestinal fortitude to do that. And it's hard sometimes to instill that into young players, especially if they're winning. If you win a couple games and you don't play the right way, you don't play the way you're supposed to, or the standards are there, when you win those games, it's a false sense of security. You're like, oh, I could do that. I get, life is about delayed consequences or delayed success. Like, you ain't gonna get beat today, but you will get beat doing that if you continue to rest on that and go play good teams. And so I think that's where the rubber hits the road.
I don't think the Cavs. No, I didn't know you were going directly to me, but I don't think I'm not the basketball expert. Jason's the basketball expert, but I will answer the question. I don't, and maybe I'm being silly here or naive, but I don't think that the Cavs. I don't think they didn't play well because they thought it would be easy to beat Sacramento. I don't know. I don't think this team is that overconfident at this point. Do you guys think that? I just think they had a bad night for whatever reason.
Well, you're right. They did. It's just, to me, it's a team. It's a team they should have beaten. And I do think there might have been some peek ahead. They might have been thinking more about the Warriors than perhaps the Kings. And if you do that in the NBA on the road, particularly on a West Coast trip, you're going to lose. These guys get paid too, and they came to play last night, and they just – the other thing too is that defense takes effort, and there's a lot of want to that goes into defense. And maybe they weren't thinking that, Bull, but subconsciously they're knowing we're on a West Coast trip. We got a big one against the Warriors last night. Let's do enough to get by with the win. And if you play 48 minutes that way, you're going to lose. You need to be more aggressive than let's just do enough to get by, save a little bit for the Warriors game moving forward. Because last year, the one mistake I thought they made, Jason, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. When I was watching them in December, I had an ongoing conversation with another buddy of mine who's a huge NBA fan, who's not a Cavs fan but was watching them a lot. And I kept saying to him, I'm stunned at how hard we're playing defensively. There's a cost to pay for that in March and April because you only have so much fuel to burn. And I thought they needlessly burned it on a lot of nights where I think some of the veteran NBA teams were looking at the Cavs going, oh, that's cute. They think this matters and they're playing really hard defense. We'll see you in April or maybe not.
And that's the point I try and make all the time is last year when the Cavs beat the Bucks at home, it was a sound beatdown and everyone was like, yes! And the Bucks are like, all right.
Yeah.
And
see you in April.
So,
yeah, right.
So there, and that's the point I think we were trying to make earlier about the difference in the regular season and postseason, why regular season results certainly don't matter. It's about the process and about the habits and everything else. But ultimately, like, it was a bad game. They got off to a great start this year. These are young kids. They hear everything. They hear everyone throwing flowers at their feet. And I think they got caught up in a little bit. And
it's easy to have happen.
They just beat LeBron. LeBron comes out. They didn't play well that half.
And LeBron sang their praises in the post-game news conference.
So now they're like, oh, this is easy. We about to get this money out here too.
You know what? They make it all good with a win over Golden State.
Right.
Yeah, that's still a good team.
Even though, guys, the reality is the war. I know they're a better team than this, obviously, but they're playing terrible basketball right now. The Warriors.
Right. Well, that would scare. That actually scares me. Because we know what they're
4-7, and they've lost, I think, 7 of the last 8 or something like that.
But
7 of 9.
That's a team that knows May and June, and they don't care a whole lot about November and December.
True, Jason, but Klay Thompson's not the same player anymore. Right? I mean, is that fair to say?
I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said Klay Thompson's not the same player anymore. Isn't that fair to say?
He's had a ton of injuries.
Yeah, he's not the same.
His body's probably not the same. I think that's fair.
And Jordan Poole's coming off the bench. I would probably start him. I don't know Klay would come off the bench. Steve Kerr talked about we might need some changes. But, I mean, they got guys. I mean, Jordan Poole, they just gave him that money. He looks like he's a guy. I don't know how much you will lose defensively.
They're a team. They're a franchise in transition.
Yeah.
And we know about the Draymond thing.
They've got some big decisions to make.
They can't afford to keep everybody.
That's right.
Even the Warriors and even the Bay money, it runs out at some point, and it gets the luxury tax, especially with the repeat offender status that we've been talking about on and on and on. This is what the Cavs are trying to avoid. They have a lot of young guys. They got a long window here of success, but at some point, even the wealthiest owners, they feel it, and they got to start making some really hard business decisions.
You got to write some pretty big checks, and you can run from that for a while, but it's going to catch you, and it's caught the Warriors for sure. All right, Bull, stand by. We're going to come back to you in a little bit, but right now, Aditi, are you okay? I'm told you were stung by a bee. What? Why?
Yeah.
I tell you so many times, Aditi, if I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times, don't agitate these things.
Why are there bees in November? What kind of demonic bees are there?
Apparently they come out in the fall.
They love the nice days.
Carbon
I'm as old
dioxide.
as I am, which I'm not saying, but it is old. I've never been stung by a bee before. So my
Real
very
life?
first thought was, oh my gosh, am I allergic? Yeah, like how do you know if you're allergic to bee stings until you actually get stung by a bee?
That's true. I can't believe you've made it this far before you've ever been stung.
Yeah, I figured out the
I
hard
mean,
way.
it is sort of crazy. Yeah, no, it was a honeybee, not a yellow jacket, not whatever. The stinger was really big, but I was very lucky. There were some neighbors outside, and this one neighbor had this like suction thing. So she like stuck it there, and it allegedly, sucked the venom out. But I don't know, it really, it stings. I was actually texting Mikey McNuggets, and I was like, how do I know if I'm allergic? If I'm allergic, would I already know? Would I be dead if I was allergic? Not
I'm allergic.
You're not.
I'm allergic to shellfish, and I figured it out the hard way. And so, you quickly know. Like, your opinion.
When you stop breathing, you know.
Like, my nose is big now, but it was really big. Like, I was like, my nose, my mouth, my ears are enlarging.
What was the Will Smith movie where he was, I can't remember, was it Hitch?
Yeah, Hitch. That was it.
And he was on the date, and he ate shellfish.
Yep.
And that scene where his face blew up, that is one of the funniest scenes of all time.
It's kind of like that. Get you an EpiPen.
Have one ready to go.
Wait, so, I mean, you're not saying the face looks that blown up, right? Like my neck is definitely
you're not allergic.
No, you're not allergic. I never know that you've been stung by a bee. What were you doing? You're just outside doing some fall yard work?
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Jay.
What were you doing? Were you out doing some like outside fall cleanup or what?
No, I was running, and then I was just kind of cooling down on my walk, and I saw these two neighbors, so I stopped to talk to them because, I'm being friendly, and it's a gorgeous day, and boom, the bee was just, what are you doing? Why are you stopping to talk? You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, wow,
but it was
that's crazy.
it was actually really good that these two neighbors were there because one of them is a nurse, so she sent me home with this like fancy wash so that I don't get MRSA, which is sort of crazy. Like, can a bee sting really lead to MRSA? I don't know about that.
Wow.
Well,
I don't want to find out.
Nurses take every precaution, and we're glad that that's the case. Aditi, your thoughts on Dolphins-Browns? We got the good news just a short while ago that Denzel Ward will suit up. I think if there's a game, you'd like to have him for every game, obviously, but particularly this game with Tyreek Hill. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, and not just Tyreek Hill, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen
Yes.
Waddle, because let me tell you, those are 2 1s. I don't even know that it's a 1A and a 1B. I think it's a 1A and a 1A. And Tua is just playing with a ridiculous amount of confidence. I saw him 2 weeks ago against the Lions when the Dolphins got down, and then he brought them back. The defense shut out or at least shut down the Lions more in the second half, played a little bit tighter. I just think that Tua is very, very smart with the ball. He knows who's the guy that he needs to go to. He's not locked in on any one person. And when you've got weapons like this, why be locked in on just one? And I think that Mike McDaniel is really, really, really speaking to what Tua can do well. And not just on the field in an X and O way. I said this to the guys earlier in the week that you just see Tua blossoming under coaching that believes in him. He's playing for a guy who really thinks that he's capable of so much, and he's responding. And you see why something like that matters so much. So, I think it's a really tough matchup, but I also think the last time we saw the Browns looked awfully good. Myles Garrett looked like we need Myles Garrett to look if we're going to talk about him as a potential defensive player of the year. We saw the Browns do what they needed to do on offense to be able to run the ball and bleed clock and secure a win. So, in some ways, you should feel bullish about the Browns too.
Well, kind of along those lines, we've spent a lot of time this week talking about Tyreek Hill and the fear factor that he brings, and rightfully so. His numbers are bonkers. But I made the point earlier, he's got 76 catches this year and 3 touchdowns. 3 out of 76 catches. So is there a path? I was trying to go 3, but I think I was off camera. So there it is. So is there a path for Tyreek to be Tyreek and he goes nuts, but you keep him out of the end zone and you still win the game?
Isn't that what we often talk about when we talk about bend, don't break defenses? Like, do whatever you need to do in between the 20s, but if the defense can bow up in the red zone, then, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many yards you give up. It doesn't matter how many catches you give up if you can indeed keep that end zone clear. And, I'll tell you, that's what I saw this last week with the Jaguars and the Raiders. Davante Adams, who the week before against the Saints had just 1 catch for 3 yards, went absolutely off in the first half. Josh McDaniels had told us that he was going to make a concerted effort to create opportunities for Davante Adams. And he did. Adams had, I think, 10 catches for 146 yards. Well, guess what happened in the second half? The Jaguars completely shut out the Raiders. So what looked like this huge game for Davante Adams, because if you look at the stats right now, it was a huge game, and I'm sure fantasy people think it was a huge game. At the end of the day, it didn't matter because the Jags kept the end zone clean when it really did matter. And so I think there's a piece of, as great as Denzel Ward is, as much as you have hopes for that Browns secondary, you're not keeping Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle totally, completely catchless and yardless.
Right.
Yeah,
But
never
if you
going to
can
happen.
somehow keep the Dolphins out of the end zone or limit how much they get into the end zone, I think the great Dick LeBeau used to say, if you could keep a team to 17 or fewer points, you had a better than 95% chance of winning. Those are hard guys to completely shut down. Look at those numbers, right? Like, how are you just going to completely, totally put a clamp on them, on both of them? It's not as if there's one and you can bracket or cloud to the one. You've got to account for the other. But just make sure that your red zone defense is as good as it can be. And don't let these guys have 90-yard catches to get into the red zone.
Aditi, what was
Easily
your
said, right? Isn't that so easy?
Right.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. We can make you coordinator. When you look at this game, I think this changes a lot I think this changes people's perception. If you're able to beat Cincinnati, you come back after the bye week, you rest it up. If they're able to come and beat the Dolphins, how will that change your view on the Browns, and do you think that changes the way people feel about them moving forward into the next week?
Okay, so I'm going to totally sound like a coach when I say this, but who gives a crap what anybody else thinks? Like, who cares what the external perception of that team is? We're not in some like BCS or Harris poll where we need style points here. Like, this is just about getting your wins, playing the type of football you want to play, and having sort of success beget success. So do people talk about the Browns differently if they beat the Dolphins? Yeah, sure, I guess, maybe, but like, who cares? At the end of the day, are people really talking about the Bills differently because they lost to the Jets? Like, are the Bills suddenly not as good of a team because they lost one week? Or I don't think that that's what matters as much as it is that the Browns start stacking win after win after win. And this is what we've all been talking about for a few weeks now. The AFC is indeed wide open. There is a whole middle where no one's really separated themselves. And right now, there's not necessarily maybe the Chiefs, maybe the Bills, but there's not really anybody that you're like, my goodness, that team is never going to be caught, or that team can never be beat. I mean, look at just what happened with the Bills. So I think that if you want to get into the dance, if you want to start competing, if you want to be in place, that when week 13 comes and Deshaun Watson gets back on the field, you're in the thick of it. You need to win games. And the Dolphins are the next one. And are the Dolphins more of a quality win than, let's say, I don't know, the Panthers are? Sure, but again, you're not getting style points right now. You just need W's. And if it does something internally, if you as a player, as a Cleveland Browns player, start to feel a little better about yourself because you've beaten the Bengals and you've beaten the Dolphins and you think those are better teams, then great. I mean, feel good, play good, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I think what G. Bush was asking is not public perception. You personally, like,
oh, do I feel better about them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you were asking about like who, because she's right. Who cares? No, it means nothing. But from your expert position, and I know that you said it looks like no one's running away from it. But here's what suddenly watching the Monday night game, my thought was, Baltimore kind of is now. Baltimore has emerged as that team, and we know Cincinnati can be very good too. But at 3-5, when you're looking up at a 6-3, where I think it's really getting late early for the Browns is suddenly winning that division with a 2.5 game gap now looks like it's a more uphill climb. And when you look at what they've done against the other AFC teams that are going to be fighting for these wild card spots, they're not going to have the tiebreaker edge against anybody. So,
okay, so
you personally, if they go out and put together, because they haven't done it this year, a second straight game where they look like the team we thought they were going to be, how do you and how does your perception of this team then change at 4-5, starting to go into some stretch here where you know you're getting Watson back soon?
And G, I apologize. I completely agree with you there, Jay. Yes, I feel better because then, to your point, you're seeing consecutive stacked wins and consecutive solid performances. And so then it does feel, you want any team to be playing its best football as the season goes on. The Ravens have been playing better in consecutive weeks. And to refer back to the Ravens, they're just about to get deeper. I mean, they are the deepest team in the division, and they're adding more depth. You're getting some guys that are healthier, and that gives them even more depth.
Well, and so Smith, too, changed lives. I mean, they look completely different. Yeah.
Right. And if you are acknowledging and recognizing, you being the Browns, if the Browns are acknowledging and recognizing the urgency that is necessary right now, and the Browns are meeting that moment right now, by stacking strong, solid wins, then yes, you do feel better about them. If the Browns lay an egg this week, if they come off the bye and they lay an egg, then how can you possibly feel good about them? And
yeah,
you're
I
right.
think the season, Aditi, I think the season's over with a loss Sunday. Yeah. I really do. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but at 3-6, you are what your record says you are. You're not a very good team. You're going to have to be a complete opposite of that down the stretch and then hope like hell you get a lot of help and make it to the playoffs. I think they have to play Sunday like it's the first round of the playoffs. I really do.
I think that just mathematically, it's impossible to say, okay, they're totally out of it. Or look at what the Dolphins did. Was it just last year when they won 7 in a row to finish the season? You know, it is possible to go on a run. It's not impossible, but I think the piece there is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you can't close, if you can't finish, if you can't put away an opponent that you need to put away. And I do think that intangible, that emotional thing plays into who you are and the type of swagger you have. And when you feel that you are playing for something, that you are playing to be in the race to continue playing, then I think that informs you in a different way than if you're just playing to put out good tape for yourself. So I buy that. I'm with you there, Jay.
Yeah, I know mathematically, of course not, but man, it just feels like, I mean, 3 and 5 sucks. It doesn't feel good at all, but 3 and 6 just starts.
Right, and especially because you don't necessarily have a track record or a history of feeling that you're always winning. I'll use it. We talked about the Ravens earlier. Let's go back. Let's talk about the Steelers a few years ago when Ben Roethlisberger was gone and Duck Hodges was their starting quarterback. The end of that season, they're still in it. And they were one game out of making the playoffs with Duck Hodges, a guy that nobody in the NFL wanted as their starting quarterback. But that was in many ways made possible by Mike Tomlin and by Mike Tomlin's record of always being in it, of Mike Tomlin's nature and demeanor. And I'm not saying that Kevin Stefanski doesn't have that, but he doesn't have 15 years behind him. He doesn't have a Super Bowl behind him that he's necessarily the Pied Piper, that if he sits here and he tells guys that have never, really won, hey, just believe it, we can still win. We can still win.
It's easier to take that hill with Tomlin.
Yeah, it's a little harder of a sell,
when you said that, you reminded me of one of the most incredible stats in all of sports. And I'm going to mess this up because I don't know exactly what it is. But as Ben retired, I remember, I think it was Jim Nantz on the call saying that in his entire career, how many years was it? 16?
18.
Okay.
18.
In his entire career, I think he played one game where he had no chance of making the playoffs, where they were actually eliminated from playoff contention. It was the last game of whatever season that they didn't make the playoff. So, I mean, when you think about that, the fact that he played for all that time, that every single football game he played was kind of like, we're still in this thing. We can still have a chance. It's mind-numbing to me.
It's funny because, it's actually a conversation I had a few years ago with Jason's buddy Ken Carman on the radio. And I had said, would you as a fan base, because in the city of Pittsburgh, they make so much of the fact that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. He's had 500 seasons. He's had 8-8 seasons, but he's never had a losing season.
Right.
And so I had said, at some point, that really just doesn't mean much, right? Like Mike Tomlin has won 3 playoff games in the last 11, 12 years.
Right.
That whole time when he had Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Ben Roethlisberger and one of the best O-lines in the NFL and a defense littered with first-round picks, all he had to show for it was one trip to the AFC title game. So I was kind of saying, not having a losing season really doesn't count for much. Like, wouldn't you rather win a Super Bowl and suffer a couple down years? Think about the Eagles, for instance. The Eagles win a Super Bowl and then have a couple down years. But you've got that high of actually winning. Or do you think it's really, really fun to be engaged in your team every single December?
Yeah.
So people in Pittsburgh have not celebrated anything of note in whatever.
Celebrated a hell of a lot more than we have.
Yep.
Right, but every single December they're turning on the TV, and the game happens.
Yep. Yeah, sign me up for that plan.
That at least your team captures your attention until December.
Yeah, we were on that plan in the late '80s and the early '90s, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. No, we never even got to a Super Bowl, but I'd take that over what we've had over the last 30 years any day. So.
Competing. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not willing to write off the Browns yet. I
Good.
really liked
I'm
what
glad.
I saw Monday night against the Bengals. I thought that was kind of a make-or-break moment. Our buddy Adam made a point of saying if they lose that game, just get rid of Kareem Hunt, like call it the end. And
Right.
the Browns responded. And I had said on air, I think that Myles Garrett really needs to put this team on his back. And Myles Garrett responded.
He did.
And you saw what the Bengals just turned around and did to the Panthers. I mean, what did Joe Mixon have Monday night in Cleveland? 30 yards? 30 rushing yards?
We put a
And then
complete
the
lid
next
on
week
him.
he goes out and scores 5 touchdowns?
Yeah.
The Browns did
My
a
fantasy team
really,
loved every
really
second
good
of it.
job.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry,
Aditi,
go ahead.
we've got to run because Bull's dying to do this Guardians preview for next season. But
he's cussing right now.
Be well. We will see you next week, and I hope your bee sting is okay.
Thanks, guys. Have a great
right.
weekend.
Bye, Aditi. Yeah,
She just described the Guardians, by the way.
she did.
Yeah.
Like-
No, she absolutely to a T.
Yeah.
Because and I'll take that. I know it's not getting the ring, and I know it's not the ultimate Cavaliers championship we got to experience, but you're relevant. You're playing nationally televised games in October. If
That's
you're the
what
Browns,
counts.
you're playing in January. Those are the moments that we will always remember.
Yep.
So I would take that over.
We need more of them. God, we need more of them.
I'll take anything at this point. All right, Bull. I can't wait to hear your Guardians preview because yesterday you really piqued my interest when you talked about a specific catcher that you think this team should target.
I got one, too.
And-
Let's see if it's the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to see if it is the same. So you tell us what you got.
By the way, quick stat: the Browns have 7 losing seasons in the last 8 years. The Steelers have 7 losing seasons since 1972.
No,
How
thanks.
nauseating is
I
that?
feel great now. Thank you.
You did all that. You did all that to serve
Okay.
us up that. Yo, you
Yeah,
dirty.
sorry. Here's the catcher that now I'm not sure the team would ultimately trade him, but this team definitely wants to trade a catcher. He probably is not the one they want to trade, but I think the Indians have the prospects to get him. You'd have team control for 5 years, and he's a good defensive player and a fantastic hitter. And Jason, you want to guess who it is?
I think we're on the same team, but we might have different catchers.
Are you talking
wow.
about a team up north of us?
That could be
I am.
really interesting then.
Oh, no,
So
we're different. We're different. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm thinking Alejandro Kirk of the Blue Jays. Now, he was an all-star last year, so you're like, why would the Blue Jays trade him? Well, the Blue Jays have a ton of talent, but they have 3 good catchers. Their best prospect, Gabriel Moreno, who came up last year, is a catcher. Danny Jansen, who they've had for a number of years, who's an excellent defensive player and a solid hitter with good power, is a catcher. And so is Alejandro Kirk. So they can afford to trade one of those guys for other things. The the Guardians, as we know, have a ton of and you'd have to give up a lot to get him because he's under team control for 5 more years. Like I said, he's good on both ends. He doesn't look like he'd be a good catcher. If you've seen him, he's like 5'8", 240 or something.
Undersized. Yeah, he doesn't look like he'd be a catcher at all.
But he fits perfectly on this team. He makes great contact, and he has some power too. He's a slugger, so he'd be. Now you have to give up a lot to get him, but that would be my top guy at catcher. But there's other options, guys. Wilson Contreras is out of the Guardians market. He's going to get a $100 million contract. But also on the Blue Jays, Danny Jansen, who I just mentioned there, a little more veteran, has a few years left on his deal, but would be an upgrade. Christian Vasquez in free agency, and Sean Murphy also from Oakland.
Now,
Did I get one of your guys there?
That was my guy.
Yeah, I'd take any of those guys.
Bull, for the casual fans, they'll say, "Hey, well, don't you have Bo Naylor? Like, do you mean these guys are better than him, or is he not a top prospect, or why to the regular fan would you have?
Yeah, why would we have to go outside the organization?
Okay, and what I would say to that is, and maybe Bo Naylor ends up being a part of these trades, is I got a lot of good young players already on this team, some that have proven it, some that have started to prove it. I don't want to have a rookie or second-year player in every single spot in the lineup. So in some spots, I got to give up some of my prospects, maybe including Bo Naylor, to make sure I have a veteran. And catcher's a spot where I'd rather have a veteran player. Now, Alejandro Kirk is a young guy, too. I mean, I think he's only like 24 years old. He's only been in the big leagues for parts of 3 years. Last year was the first year that he actually had the full season in the big leagues. But the guy's real good and under team control. Bo Naylor, I know it feels like right now every Guardians prospect's going to pan out because so many did this past season. But it's not always going to work that way. And I think there are spots where you'd rather add some veterans. I got 3 spots really 4 spots where I'd like to do that.
Bull,
and
to
that's
your
one
point
of them. Catcher.
about leaning too heavily on the young guys, I just remember Oscar Mercado too. And I thought he was a plug-and-play guy that had figured it out.
I got destroyed for saying that earlier this year. Because I wasn't comparing Quan to Mercado.
No, I'm not either. But it's a cautionary tale.
Right, absolutely.
Just because, and that's a great point that you don't want to load up too heavily on these young guys because just because they've made it. So the first year, that barrier to entry to being an everyday player in Major League Baseball is very difficult. But now it's really prove-it time. Because now the league has a book on you.
Now they got tape on you.
And so what happened with Mercado was he had holes. And with the scouting staff being what it is now, if you have a weakness, they're going to find it, and they are going to kill you with it until you prove you can handle that.
Rarely does success go like this.
I know.
It's always like
that's right.
Very rocky.
Then you go.
So what y'all doing is y'all telling me there's a good chance that maybe 3 to 4 of our young players have a potential of falling off.
I wouldn't say that.
Not falling off, but not playing.
I would expect one of them too. I would just say the law of averages is one of them, and I'm not saying it's going to be as drastic as Mercado was, but one of them we're going to look at in July next year and say, and I hope it's not Oscar Gonzalez. He's the guy that I think really has figured it out. But one of these kids, maybe it's Quan, I don't know. One of them we're going to look at in July next year and say, what the hell happened? Was last year a mirage? No. This year, everybody's changing what they're doing to him. They've got the entire offseason to figure out the plan. Once the book is out, it's out. Mm-hmm. And so, Bull, I'm with you. I would much rather they go out and get, because we do have one in the pipeline in Bo Naylor. But catchers are tricky. We thought Mejia was going to be that guy.
Right.
Catchers are very tricky.
They traded him twice.
I know. Well, sometimes you get intoxicated with a guy's talent, and you think, well, he can't miss. But at catcher, it's odd. There's so much to the position of catcher.
Right.
It's not just your bat. It's how you work with pitchers, your communication skills, your ability to retain the knowledge of 400 hitters that you're going to see throughout the season. So I would rather they go the proven route with the catcher.
Yeah.
And the prospect thing is dicey for me at that position.
And remember, guys, the Guardians have, I know this sounds crazy, but they actually have too many good prospects at this point. You can't keep them all.
Right.
And so, which is why they're going to have to make at least one trade of significance before the Rule 5 draft, which is, 4 weeks away, roughly?
Right.
Give or I can't remember exactly when
they've got more
is.
guys they need to protect. It's not quite as drastic as it was last winter. But you're right. There are more names out there. There's a couple of guys that they need to squeeze onto the 40-man. And they do need to make a deal. Like a guy like Nolan Jones, who's a lefty power hitter, who is basically an exact duplicate of Josh Naylor. He's got power, but he can't hit lefties. There's no spot for him now. Jose Ramirez is locked up long-term at third. He's a duplicate of Naylor at first. What are you going to do with him?
Right.
And, Jason, I think, listen, Oakland, if we're talking Sean Murphy, who I know you were going to bring up.
That was my guy.
I like Murph. I would take him in a heartbeat.
Oakland's got no talent. They've got nothing. So they are a team, more even than the Blue Jays, that would love to get a guy like Nolan Jones, because Nolan Jones is starting and playing every day for Oakland. They're just going to put him out there every day. And you could trade them, one top prospect,
would you
maybe
throw
two.
in Bo Naylor in that deal?
They've already got two
I
young.
would think.
The top prospect they got in the Matt Olson deal is a catcher. That's why they're moving on from Murphy.
Everybody,
they've got 2 other guys.
Everybody at top
those
5
are the 2 teams.
Catcher?
No, those are Toronto and Oakland are the 2 teams that are just absolutely stacked.
Who would have known?
Catcher right now.
Yeah.
I think in free agency you could get Vasquez maybe 2 for 16, which maybe 2 for 20 max, which is for the Guardians is not unreasonable. I mean, they were paying Hedges like $5 million, and Vasquez is a much better hitter than Hedges.
Yeah, he was at $4 million. Zach Meisel, who I think does a terrific job with all this stuff, I was having this conversation with him. He thinks Murphy's a perfect fit as well. He's got 3 years of control left, just entering arbitration this year, projected to make less than Hedges, to your point, about $500,000 less than what Hedges made. But he thinks there's room for Murphy and both Naylors at catcher, first base, and DH, that those 3 guys, that way you're not trading Bo Naylor for Sean Murphy. Like I said, the A's already have 2 top prospects. And that's a way to sort of, you have Murphy now as the entrenched veteran. You can bring Bo Naylor along slowly. You're only going to have Murphy for 3 years, maybe 2 if you trade him with a year left. And he's a right-handed bat. He had 18 home runs last year. That would rank 3rd on the Guardians in terms of power. So he brings that power bat.
they got to go they also got to get a slugger at first base and DH, I think.
Well, Jose Abreu makes sense, and I know his power numbers dropped. And again, I was talking to Zach about it. Zach thinks he's still going to find an everyday job next year. If you bring him here, is he your everyday first baseman?
I would take him as our everyday first baseman right now.
And then what do you do? And then Josh Naylor becomes the DH.
He's a platoon DH that hits. I mean, it was really glaring in the playoffs, but even through the regular season, you've got to have some success against lefties. You just have to.
Yeah.
And he has none. And it's just another hole in a lineup that already had two big holes in it to begin with,
right.
Whether it was lefty or righty. So
now is that something you think he can get done, or is that a clickbait one?
No, I think Abreu. I don't think Abreu's
possibility.
Yeah. To me, he fits the mold of Encarnacion. Like he's that kind of a player. He's a guy
his career,
later in his career.
He had a good average.
Give
good
him
OPS,
two,
all
maybe
that.
even throw two with an option.
Now his power and run production just plummeted.
It did, and I wondered how much of that. Chicago was a mess this year.
They had a ton of injuries.
I wondered about Abreu. Is he a guy that just lost interest because of what happened there this season? You can see how that could happen for a veteran.
Yeah.
But they were just a train wreck from jump, and he wasn't a motivated bat. Put him in this Cleveland lineup where he's surrounded by young, energetic, exciting players. It may re-energize his career, and it might be one of those things where it's good for a scene change is good for him to come to a team like this. I would love to get Abreu.
Two other first base DH options. I don't think Rizzo's realistic, so we'll leave him out.
Yeah, I don't either.
Josh Bell, who's a free agent. He's been an up-and-down player in his career, but he's a switch hitter.
Did have an all-star season, at least one.
Yes, I think it was 2019, I believe.
It was when the game was here. Yeah.
And he's got huge power. I mean, he's a big-time power. He struggled after he got traded to the Padres last year, but he was having a really good season before he got traded for Washington. And one other guy, this guy's not a power hitter, but he's an excellent hitter and fits the mold. You know, if you can't get the big slugger, he was here before, Yandy Diaz. The Rays are looking probably moving on from him at this point.
I always liked Yandy.
Zach mentioned him as well.
I just couldn't understand why he wasn't a power hitter. I mean, you talk about looking
so
apart.
Big.
Yeah.
He just
a lot
looks,
of doubles, but
a lot of doubles, but just no home run power whatsoever.
Just doesn't lift the ball. Just doesn't get it elevated.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is.
But he walks more than he strikes out.
Bull, so before we move to final takes, you had mentioned yesterday that you want sort of a middle of the rotation starter. Any names for us on that? Who you'd like to see them chase?
I mentioned a couple of weeks ago maybe bringing back either Corey Kluber or Carlos Carrasco on short-term deals. Mm-hmm. But if you want a guy a little more exciting, the Marlins could trade Pablo Lopez, who's been a really solid starter for them for a couple of years. Now, he's only got 2 years left to control, so I'm not 100% sure the Guardians will want to do that. Maybe they feel like they could lock him up long-term. He's not a star pitcher, but he's a good pitcher. And the Marlins got a ton of pitching, and they got no hitting in their pipeline. So the Marlins and Guardians, I think, make a lot of sense with all the hitting depth that they have in the minor leagues to work out a deal for Pablo Lopez.
I think they're going to move on from Zach Plesac.
I think they
definitely
should.
Yeah,
to.
Yeah, so I think your rotation. I think they're going to ride it out with Bieber. He's got 2 years of control left. I don't think Ahmed Rosario's back.
Really?
I think.
Don't?
I don't. Well, I mean, listen. Rosario's going to make $9 million. Bieber's going to make $10 million. Can they afford to pay both of those guys and Jose and some of the other stuff?
Yes, they can.
But
they'll be a middle tier team, but it's right now they're 26th or whatever.
And also,
Jason, they
Rosario's
should
down
be
to
able
his
to have an
last
80,
year
90 million payroll at least.
Okay, but what they should do and where they're at is not always an alignment. I'm just saying he's down to his last year control. They moved him to short to trade him. And it worked so well, they couldn't get him out of the lineup, and they couldn't trade him.
I'll be disappointed if they move on from him.
I don't think personally, this isn't like source. This is just me.
A tough sell.
I don't think Rosario and Bieber are both back on this team.
That is a tough sell.
And we saw that they were confident in Gabriel Arias. They played him at first.
But, see, Jay,
in the divisional series. They think he's ready.
It reminds me of 17, where this club is. I know they didn't make the deep run this year like the Indians did in 16, but to me, you've got an opportunity to strike this fan base while it's hot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you move on from Rosario or Bieber, the overwhelming message that fans like G. Bush that aren't in the weeds are going to say is, What? He
I
was
just
a
watched
big
it.
part. Here we go again, dumping salary.
I think Bieber would be worse than Rosario
Bieber
on
would be
that.
a
that'd be
definite.
crazy.
They better not move Bieber.
But again, like they're going to at some point. He's got 2 years of control left. He's already rejected one long-term contract offer that they gave him after he won the Cy Young. Like, this is just the reality of it. They're going to move on at some point. They're not going to let him. They're not going to keep for 2 years and let him walk for nothing. And this is that
That's
sweet
another
spot
reminder
that,
of who we are and what we are.
that 2
Right.
years. Like, they came close to trading Lindor when he had 2 years left on his deal. They were really
Yeah.
close with the
No, I know.
Dodgers. They had a deal set up with Ramirez last year. They were going to deal him with 2 years left before they came up with the extension. 2 years is really that sweet spot. Now, with Lindor, they kept him for one more year to make a run at it, and obviously that's where they are this
Well,
year.
I hope they do that at least with Bieber, because if they move Bieber in the offseason, they're going to lose a lot of fans.
So I think I think Bieber's back, but I don't think Bieber and Rosario are both
All right,
back.
we'll see.
The only saving grace is if they do trade Rosario. I think we're to the point now where we assume when they trade players for prospects that the trade's going to pan out for the Guardians, because it almost always does.
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't always work out, and they're due to have
No.
some clunkers.
Yeah, I'm going to be ticked if they trade Rosario.
I am
but
too,
I
because
think
you know
Jason's
what?
right.
You've
I
got
wouldn't be surprised
you've got
if they do.
minority owners now that can help with payroll. I'm sick and tired of looking at the payroll rankings and seeing this Guardians team 27th or 28th. It's nauseating.
I'm gonna tell you,
They've got playoff gate money from last year.
Yep.
It's time to reinvest in this baseball
Let's
team.
go.
Write some checks. Get the players in here that you need to make a difference. This is the window's here. Don't screw it up and start letting key pieces like Bieber go.
There's a lot of people that are fringe guys that is.
I know you'll
I'm
lose them.
I'm
instantly.
jumping on it.
And that's why, attendance-wise, that's why they are where they are.
Yeah.
Because wash, rinse, repeat. Get star, lose star. Get star, lose star. It's time they start retaining some of them. And I know it's unrealistic to think they can re-sign Bieber to 5 year after he's up here.
Yeah, that's
but
not happening.
No. All right. We're going to hold final thoughts for our overtime content, right?
That's going to be overtime content,
right.
running a little heavy. We do have to get in what the internet is saying. And whenever we tell you what the internet is saying, it's brought to us by our favorite sponsors of PCC Airfoils. Are you looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits? PCC Airfoils is a leading manufacturer in Northeast Ohio. All locations of PCC Airfoils in Eastlake, Mentor, Wickliffe, and Minerva are hiring for all positions starting at $18 and up, plus full benefit packages, paid time off, and a signing bonus. You can apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more. We asked the internet, based on that last conversation we had, who do you want to see the Guardians go after? Your number one target. Tequila Mockingbird said Sean Murphy for the catcher spot. Lawrence Goggins said Pablo Lopez. He also said Michael Conforto, a Little League World Series alum. Fry says he thinks Murphy is the best mix of production, price, and youth. And Sir Grizz says Christian Walker from Arizona for that first place spot.
Right.
So a lot of different names, but a lot of the ones Bull was thinking too.
What stood out me from that? What was the first tweet from?
Tequila Mockingbird.
It's like one of the
That's
great
awesome.
Twitter handles of all time. Tequila
in the chat all the
Mockingbird.
time.
Nice, very nice, Tequila. Well done. Yeah, I think Murphy is the guy. I hope they go out and make that move.
Now, the price at the trade deadline for him was either Gavin Williams or Daniel Espino. They're two top pitching
I
prospects.
know it's going to be a steep price.
And it's going to be, you're going to have to pay for any of those guys. You're going to have to pay.
I would not give Espino. I wouldn't personally.
Espino, I wanted to see him last year. I wanted to go down to Akron. He got hurt.
Yeah.
And it really set him back because I think it's going to delay when we see him in Cleveland now because
Sure,
of the knee
pushes
injury last
everything
year.
back.
Yeah.
But I don't want. I'm too excited about him to put him in
I agree.
part of. And I think there's enough. To Bull's point, there's enough talent that you could package 3 players.
You can't.
And
They have,
move them.
I mean,
because
Brian-
if I'm Oakland, I need bodies.
Right.
You know.
And it sounds like if they really are committed to Gabriel Arias, and it sounds as if they are, that makes Brian Rocchio expendable. It makes
Right.
Tyler Freeman expendable.
Yes.
We've already mentioned Nolan Jones. George Valera is a name we haven't mentioned. I don't think they're going to trade him, but that's another big-time outfield prospect.
He's another one I hope they don't trade.
They've got to make room. Where are you going to play him? You got to make room for him somewhere. And that's why Josh Naylor may become available, because
Right.
now you plug Valera in. Oscar Gonzalez becomes your DH. Valera goes to right field.
Wow.
Like and now Naylor's a name that maybe Josh, not Bo. Maybe Josh is the name
Exactly.
that you start
Yeah.
hearing in trade rumors.
All right. That's going to do it. We're out of time. We're going to wrap up the week tomorrow with our Friday edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We'll be giving our Browns-Dolphins picks. Anything else you want to plug for tomorrow's show?
Headlines to quell, and we're going to do a certain segment with Mike Polk based on the emojis that you can get for being a member.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're gonna play a little game with Polk on that. Should be a
That'll
lot
be
of
good.
fun.
That'll be good.
Right up his alley.
All
so.
on our Friday edition of the Ultimate Cleveland
Yep.
Sports Show. Meantime, we're on 22-hour break. We will see you tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, on the Friday installment of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Enjoy your day. Get out. Enjoy it. It's going to get cold after today.